You're live whenever you're ready to go.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee of September 13, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm going to start by reading the land acknowledgement. For more than 15,000 years, the First Nations walked upon and cared for the lands we call home. Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and many others who cared for their families and communities the way we now seek to care for ours. The town of Collingwood acknowledges the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818 and respects all of the nation-to-nation agreements that have formed relationships with the original inhabitants of Turtle Island. We acknowledge the reality of our shared history, the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community, and seek to continue empowering expressions of pride amongst all of the diverse stakeholders in this area. We seek to do better, to continue to recognize, learn, and grow in friendship and community, nation to nation. Item 2 on the agenda is the adoption of agenda. I'm going to read the motion that the content of the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee agenda for September 13, 2021 be adopted and presented. Could I ask for a mover and a seconder? That would be Deputy Mayor Hall, Vice Chair Jeffrey. Thank you. All those in favor? Oh, request to speak, Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. On the agenda this evening under 5.12, under staff reports, which is on page 4, there is an item that was referred to staff, and I'd like an opportunity to defer, I guess, or refer it to the next development operations meeting. It's the matter that relates to heritage materials within the Heritage District. And there are ongoing positive discussions between members of the BIA and Heritage, I believe specifically ACO. I stand to be corrected, but I think that it'd be fruitful to have those conversations continue and then allow the BIA to fully present an opinion before there's discussion on this specific matter. So if possible, I'm bringing this forward now so that if there are members of the public who wish to speak to it this evening, that they don't sit through the entire portion of the meeting to find out that I have this intent.
Okay, thank you for alerting us to that request for a deferral. That's item 5.12. Deputy Clerk Dahl, I think what I should do is continue to have a vote on the agenda, and then Deputy Mayor Hall, if you think it appropriate, we could move that item up and deal with it first, the deferral request. Vice Chair Jeffrey, you had a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say we could just vote to amend the agenda to defer it, I think, but Becky will tell us otherwise.
Yeah, Deputy Clerk Dahl, over to you.
As long as everyone's in consensus about deferring the item, we could probably adopt the agenda as deferred. If council wants to bring the item forward and talk about it before the deferral, then you can do it separately.
All right. So I'm going to look to Deputy Mayor Hall. Would you like to have this brought forward as the agenda with this item deferred in it?
Yes, so that's okay.
Okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Mayor Saunderson, Vice Chair Jeffrey, any discussion? All in favor? That's passed unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda would be declarations of pecuniary interest. So if any members of this committee have a declaration of pecuniary interest, could they now speak? And over to you, Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. Perhaps through you to our Deputy Clerk, and I'll take her direction. But I have 2 items. The first one, I'm looking for direction. The other one's pretty clear. The first one that I'm looking at is item 6.1, and it relates to the minutes of the Heritage Committee, or staff report, I should say. And there's a recommendation that should potentially be broken out simply because The item that's actually being deferred within that is an item that I have a direct conflict of interest, and certainly will be stating that. If it's a matter that's being deferred, therefore I have no conflict, or there won't be any discussion this evening, then I don't see any issue in voting for the way it's written. So I'm just looking for some clarification as to what the deputy clerk would prefer.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Hall, I think I'd still recommend separating it just because it'll show your intent of your conflict in the minutes of the meeting.
But that's fine, because obviously when it does come forward at its whenever, I'll be stating that declaration anyways. And then the second is I'm just putting everyone on notice that item 7.4, which is under the consent agenda, it's a letter from the ACO. Part of that letter speaks to the item in 5.12. So I will be voting to receive all of the items on the consent agenda in the affirmative. But if that item is pulled for specific discussion, then I will remove myself from the conversation, as again, I would be in a conflict at that point.
And Deputy Mayor Hall, have you stated what the nature of your conflict is?
Then I have not actually tonight. I have it at a previous meeting of the BIA, and I'm sure that I'll be declaring it as it goes through its natural course. But the issue at hand is that the property, the subject property, 12 4th Street West within the town of Collingwood, I was a representative acting in a real estate capacity in the transaction. So I have a direct involvement, I should say.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any other members of the committee have a declaration of conflict they wish to make tonight? Okay, thank you. Business arising from previous meeting is number 4. Would any members of our committee have any items they would like to discuss from a previous meeting? Seeing none. Item 5 are staff reports. The first one being 5.1 C 2021-16 assumption of road for public use, Day Drive. I understand the deputy clerk's going to give us a brief overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. Stephanie has a map that she'll bring up just so you understand the property I'm talking about. And as that's coming up, just to keep the meeting moving here, prior to the development of the Eden subdivision, an easement in the favor of the previous property owner was created along this portion of Day Drive to allow for vehicle and pedestrian access to the portion of Day Drive described in the map. Can you go to the next slide, please, Stephanie? Which is part 7.8.9 on this reference plan. So as this Eden Oak subdivision has developed, this Day Drive has now been extended right through the Lockhart to Lockhart Road and Kirby Ave, and the easement is no longer required as it's now a traveled road. So just as a housekeeping matter, we'd like to be able to remove this easement, and part of the requirements of the easement is to dedicate this as a public road. Engineering has confirmed that they're okay with this becoming a public road. They've been maintaining it for some time now, and all the services are in place that need to be. So to assist the properties that are now being developed to the west of Day Drive, and to take this encumbrance off the title of their property, we're requesting council consider passing and enacting a bylaw that assumes these parts of Day Drive as a public road for public use. So if there's any questions, I don't know if John Ballock's on the line too, but I'll try to adjust them as best as I can.
All right, so before the committee considers the report, would there be any questions or comments from the public? All right, seeing none, I'll read in the motion that staff report C 2021-16 assumption of road for public use, Day Drive, be received, and that council enact and pass a bylaw to assume a portion of Day Drive, more specifically part 7, 8, 19, and 20 of Plan 51R-3059 as a highway for public use. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder. Deputy or Vice Chair Jeffrey and Deputy Mayor Hall. Would the standing committee have any questions about this presentation or any comments? All right, seeing none, we'll bring this matter to a vote. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Deputy Clerk Dahl. Item 5.2, P 2021-23, Part Lot Control Exemption Bylaw, Eden Oak, McNabb, Indigo Estates Subdivision, Block 290. Interim Director Ron Glenn is going to provide an overview of the staff report and recommendations at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a pretty straightforward report to deal with part lot control to create 2 lots for 2 single-family housing units. Justin Teakle from the planning staff will give you an overview of the details of the report. Justin?
Thank you.
Good evening, committee. So slide 1. So this report is for part lot control exemption for block 290 in the Eden Oak Indigo Estate subdivision. Block 290 is located on Tracy Lane at the western end of the subdivision and east of Hurontario Street. Next slide, please. The purpose of the application is to exempt block 290 from part lot control to facilitate the creation of 2 new lots for single detached dwellings on Tracy Lane. Part 3 along the eastern side of block 290 is for a stormwater easement. The subject lands have been exempt from the interim control bylaw. Staff are recommending in summary that council enact and pass a part lot control exemption bylaw to allow for the creation of 2 lots consisting of block 290 for single detached dwellings. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Would there be any members of the public who would like to address this matter?
If anyone is interested in speaking to this matter, if you can please press the raise your hand feature. And it doesn't look like anyone's wishing to speak to this item.
All right, at this time, I'll read in the motion that staff report P 2021-23, part lot control exemption bylaw, Eden Oak, McNabb, Indigo Estates Subdivision, Block 290 be received. The council enact and pass a part lot control exemption bylaw to allow for the creation of 2 lots consisting of blocks 290, Plan 51M-1162 for single detached dwellings. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder. Mayor Saunderson and Deputy Mayor Hall, thank you. Would any of the standing committee members have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote now. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. 5.3 on the agenda. P 2021-24 zoning bylaw amendment to remove a holding that's an H zone symbol and authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement. Block 2, Balmoral Village, and this is the Royal Windsor project. Interim Director Ron Glenn, over to you.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. This is the kind of a culmination of the site plan and control review and the removal of the H symbol. Lindsay Ayers from planning staff is going to walk you through a presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Lindsay.
Thank you, Director Glenn, and good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. So I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding 18 zone and site plan control agreement for Block 2 of Balmoral Village. Next slide, please. So this is a 2018 aerial photograph of the subject lands, which are located south of Harbour Street West and west of Kimberley Lane, which is a private condominium road. Obviously, for those that have been past the site recently, additional development has gone on the site since this aerial photograph was taken. Next slide, please. So this slide illustrates where the holding 18 symbol is proposed to be removed from. In order for the H18 symbol from the applicable residential fourth density exception for zoning to be removed, council must be satisfied that 3 conditions have been satisfied, including the completion and acceptance of a parking study, the completion and acceptance of an urban design brief, and the completion and acceptance of a market study. Planning services can confirm that a parking study and an urban design brief were submitted in support of the application, and both have been found acceptable to the town staff. Furthermore, planning services can also confirm that a market study is not required for this particular development, as no commercial uses are proposed on the subject property. Next slide, please. So I have pivoted the site plan just to fit more of it on the slide. It was originally submitted vertically. So just to reorient you, and apologies, some of the road names are upside down. The site plan consists of a 5-story, 132 unit residential apartment building with access off of Kimberley Lane. You'll see the access is quite close to the Harbor Street West and Kimberley Lane intersection. A total of 164 parking spaces are provided on the site, and those are comprised of 42 surface parking spaces and 122 underground parking spaces. Within those parking counts, a total of 9 accessible parking spaces are provided for our surface parking, and 5 are underground parking spaces. A 2-meter wide sidewalk is also proposed along the rear or west side of the building, and this will provide a new direct pedestrian connection between Sutton Lane and Harbor Street West. And 2.0 meter wide sidewalks are also proposed along the south side of the building, adjacent to Sutton Lane, and also along the front of the building's east perimeter. Next slide, please. So this is a slide of the proposed landscaping for the development. An enhanced landscaping treatment has been provided along the Harbor Street West frontage to help soften the massing of both the retaining wall and the building itself, given the grading differential along this portion of the property. As members of the committee can see, enhanced landscaping, including the provision of a privacy fence, as well as a combination of deciduous and coniferous trees, has also proposed along the west side of the property adjacent to the existing low-rise residential dwellings that were part of Balmoral Village Phase 1 development. Next slide, please. So the remaining slides illustrate the artist's renderings and building elevations for the proposed development. It is representative of the local heritage style as required for all of the mixed-use blocks within the Balmoral Village subdivision. However, the building has also incorporated some contemporary features to provide streetscape variation and to further distinguish itself from the existing built forms within the Balmoral subdivision, including the 2 mid-rise retirement home and apartment buildings and the multiple adjacent low-rise units. So this particular slide illustrates the front of the building, fronting Kimberley Lane, which again is a private condominium road. Next slide, please. And this is an elevation. It would be from the vantage point of Harbor Street West, but it does provide the west elevation or the rear of the building. And the existing low-rise residential would be, this would be what they are facing, or their rear yards are facing. Next slide. So this is the artist rendering a north building elevation for Harbor Street West, and you can see the stone retaining wall and the artist's rendering of the enhanced landscaping treatment to help soften the grading differential between the first story of the building and the pedestrian sidewalk along Harbor Street West. Next slide, please. And unfortunately, I don't have an artist rendering for the south building elevation or the south side of the building, but the south side will front Sutton Lane, which again is also a private condominium road internal to the Balmoral subdivision. And so this concludes my introduction of the file. I'm available to answer any questions that committee may have. And I understand that Kristen Rennie is also in attendance on behalf of Reed's Heritage Homes this evening, should there be any questions for the applicant.
Okay, thank you very much, Lindsay. Would there be any questions or comments from the public?
If you'd like to raise your hand, let us know you want to speak. We also have someone participating by phone. So if you want to speak by phone, the feature that you have to enter is *9, and it'll let us know. And it doesn't look like there's anyone wishing to speak tonight.
Okay, so I'll read in the recommendation. That staff report P 2021-24 zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding H-zone symbol and authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement, Block 2, Balmoral Village, Royal Windsor, be received. and that council enact and pass a zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding 18 symbol from Block 2 of the Balmoral Village Subdivision, and that council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for the Royal Windsor residential development located on Block 2 of the Balmoral Village Subdivision. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, for the staff report? Vice Chair Jeffrey, Mayor Saunderson, thank you very much. Would any member of the Standing Committee have any questions or comments? Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Planner Ayers. Lindsay, you mentioned that there is a very robust landscaping plan, but I understand that where the hydro poles are going, there may be issues with having to cut back and some deforestation there. I'm just wondering what we have in place to make sure that any work done there will be compensated for to make sure that we've got adequate landscaping.
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair, to Mayor Saunderson. There is hydro infrastructure external to the Balmoral Village Block 2 site. It will actually be occurring along the north side of Harbour Street West. It's hydro infrastructure upgrades that are being facilitated through an application with EPCOR. Originally, the original proposal was to have 70-foot hydro poles installed to facilitate the electrical supply and demands for the proposed apartment building. Planning Services did raise concerns about the original height that was proposed, and the applicant has made revisions to their proposal, and we're now looking at 55-foot hydro poles that will be going in along the north side of Harbour Street West. As it is an EPCOR application, and until the actual infrastructure and the poles are put in place, it was difficult to ascertain exactly the impact to the existing trees along the north side of Harbour Street West and how they may be impacted. Some may need to be removed entirely. Others may require varying levels of pruning. And so the applicant, because we couldn't provide drawings that showed exactly what would be occurring on the north side of the site until the infrastructure is in place, the applicant has agreed to retain their certified arborist to review all of the trees along and vegetation along the north side of Harbour Street West after the infrastructure is installed. And they will determine what remedial measures are necessary, what pruning is necessary, and undertake that work. And as in addition to that, should any trees be outright removed along the northern side of Harbour Street West as a result of this offsite work, the applicant has also agreed to have their landscape architect to review the trees that have been removed and prepare a compensation planting plan to offset any of those removals. And all of this, of course, will be done to the satisfaction of the town. So there may be further review as a result of that. And we have collected securities to this effect so that there is money being collected to handle any costs associated with all of this landscaping, potential remediation and replanting work.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. And just one more follow-up question. This project is moving forward, and despite the fact we have an ICBL in place, I'm just wanting to confirm that they have an exemption and that we're comfortable with the amount of water allotted to satisfy the need for the development.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mayor Saunderson, yes, this proposed development did receive an exemption from Council on July 19th, 2021. And the amount of water that has been allocated to this development is consistent with the proposed 132 apartment units.
Great. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Would any other member of the committee have any questions or comments? I have one, Planner Ayers. I know this parcel has been developed over the last number of years. This is the third 5 or 6 story building on the site. What is still to come?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there, with the provided committee and council approve the proposed development, there will be one remaining vacant block within the Balmoral Village subdivision, and that would be block 3. I'm not sure, Stephanie, if you can pull up the aerial image again. I believe it was slide 2 of the presentation. So Block 3 is a proposed building that I believe has the first and possibly the second floor is proposed to be commercial, medical offices, those types of uses. And then there were a number of residential units that would be on the upper floors above that. Sorry, that's if you can go to the aerial image, the slide before the site plan. There, that one. So you can see there's one vacant block that runs, the vast majority of it runs directly along Harbor Street West, and that is block 3. That is contemplated to be a mixed use residential and commercial, including medical offices, pharmacies, etc. I'm not sure exactly what would go in there, but that would be the remaining block to be developed. And at present, Planning Services hasn't received any formal Planning Act applications to proceed with development of that block at this time.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. Right, so at this point, we'll bring the matter to a vote. All those in favor? And that would be unanimous. Thank you. The next matter on the agenda is 5.4. This would be P 2021-25, proposed pet store, 2 Old Mountain Road, zoning bylaw amendment. Interim Director of Planning, Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. This is a zoning bylaw amendment to expand the number of uses to include a pet store. I believe Justin Teagle is going to take you through a short overview of the report. Thank you, Madam Chair. Justin?
All right, good evening again, committee. So as Ron mentioned, this report provides a recommendation on a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted for 2 Old Mountain Road. This proposal has also been exempt from the interim control bylaw. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. Thanks. Subject property is known as the Blue Mountain Center and contains Cineplex, Staples, and Sleep Country, among other businesses. On that aerial photo, since it's from 2018, Sleep Country isn't shown there, but it's there now. Next slide, please. Property is designated Regional Commercial District, Mixed Use Intensification Area A, Regional Commercial District by the town's official plan. Next slide, please. And the property is zoned Regional Commercial Exception 4, C2-4 by the town's zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. The purpose of the proposed amendment would be to permit a pet store on the subject lands, defined as the use of land or building where animals or birds as pets are sold, kept for sale, groomed, and trained, and includes the sale of pet, food, and accessories, but does not include the breeding or overnight boarding of pets. Next slide, please. The pet store is proposed to be established within existing GFA on the site, contained within Building E, which is circled in red on the slide in front of you. Next slide, please. Here's Building E in more detail. The area outlined in red is the approximate area of the proposed use, and so that's approximately where the Crystal Buffet is presently located. The area of the proposed store is greater than the minimum 370 square meters gross leasable area that the official planning zoning bylaw both require for retail commercial establishments in this designation and zone. Next slide, please. No objections have been received on the application. Statutory public meeting was held on February 22nd, 2021, and 1 member of the public spoke regarding inclusion of a mural on the building, and no further public comments have been received since the meeting. Next slide, please. So in terms of steps, we're at the staff recommendation, step 7 of the process. And in summary, the recommendation is that council enact and pass the zoning bylaw amendment. If council passes the bylaw, a notice of passing will be issued. And if there's no appeals received, then the bylaw will come into force and effect. Next slide, please. If anyone wishes to receive notice of the decision on the zoning bylaw amendment, they can email Clerk Holmes at the address on the screen. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I also understand that Oz Kamal is in attendance on behalf of the applicant and also may wish to speak to the committee.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the public before the committee considers the report?
Yeah, and anyone wishing to speak, if you could please press the raise your hand feature. If you're participating by phone, press *9. There's no one wishing to speak this evening on this so far.
All right. Mayor Saunderson, do you have your hand up to speak at this time?
I don't think so. If I do, my apologies.
Okay, no problem. I'll now read in the motion that staff report 2021-24 zoning bylaw amendment to remove holding H zone symbol. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Turn the page, got it. The staff report P 2021-25 proposed pet store -2 Old Mountain Road zoning bylaw amendment be received, and the council enacts and passes an amending zoning bylaw attached to the agenda for the lands at 2 Old Mountain Road, legally described as, and this is a long legal description, but I'm going to read it. Part of lots 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 north of First Street, lots 5, 6, and 7, and part lots 4, 8, and 9 south of Cardigan Street. Part of Cardigan Street, registered plan 175, closed by bylaw and instrument number R0486094. Part of lots C and D west of Balsam Road. Part of lots 1 and 9 north of Cardigan Street. Lots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 north of Cardigan Street. Part of lots 1 and 8 south of Mountain Road, that's Water Street. Lots 2 to 7 south of Mountain Road, Water Street, all on registered plan 175. Being part 9 on reference plan 51R-35, 51R-30594, town of Collingwood, county of Simcoe, and part of lot 9 south of Water Street on registered plan 175, being part 6 on reference plan 51R-30684, town of Collingwood, county of Simcoe, to permit a pet store as an additional permitted use. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Vice Chair Jeffrey, Deputy Mayor Hall. Would the standing committee have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll bring the matter to a vote. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 5.5, P 2021-26, amendments to site plan control bylaw for minor adjustments. Interim Director Ron Glenn.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. If you recall, this was a matter that was asked for by committee in July for staff to review the site plan control bylaw to address matters on properties where no site plan agreement exists. And so we have done a review of that, and the report before you this evening is the recommendations on that. Justin Teagle from the Planning Services has been instrumental in doing that site plan review with myself. And there's 2 parts of the recommendation this evening. I'll let Justin walk through the review, and then we'll talk about the 2 parts of the recommendation, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening again. This is a follow-up from the housekeeping amendments that were done in the spring in May to the site plan control bylaw. And as part of that report, there was noted that staff were looking at additional efficiencies and potential delegation options for the site plan control bylaw, in addition to the motion that Ron already referenced. So the report recommends that council pass a bylaw to amend the site plan control bylaw to do 2 things. The first is to clarify the process for minor adjustments where there's not an existing site plan agreement, as Ron mentioned. The process being approval of plans absent of an agreement at the discretion of the director. And the second is to delegate to the director of planning the authority to approve minor adjustments where there's no existing site plan agreement. So that delegated authority will enable the director to approve minor adjustments for lands without an agreement in the same way the director already has the authority for lands with existing agreements. And delegating that authority would expedite the process for minor adjustments, as they would no longer need to proceed through committee and council. However, all other categories of site plan would continue to come before committee and council for their approval. And that's all, unless Ron has more to add.
Thanks, Justin. And I think that the 2 parts of the recommendation are, one is to clarify the site plan process, in which where there is no site plan, if it's a minor adjustment, it is now going to be under a site plan, and you have to go through the process with the town. The second part of the recommendation is for consistency, that the delegation of those minor changes where there is no site plan agreement be delegated, similar to the bylaw as it exists, which delegates minor changes to existing site plan where agreement is in place to the director. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Would any members of the public be interested in offering a comment or have any questions on this matter?
For anyone wishing to speak again, if you could please press the raise your hand feature, or participating by phone, press *9. It doesn't appear that anyone wishes to speak to this matter.
Okay, thank you. I'll read in the motion. That staff report P 2021-26, amendments to site plan control bylaw for minor adjustments be received, and that council enact and pass an amending bylaw to site plan control bylaw number 2010-082 as amended to 1, clarify the process for minor adjustments where there is not an existing site plan agreement, and 2, to delegate to the Director of Planning the authority to approve minor adjustments where there is no existing site plan agreement. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the report, please? Deputy Mayor Hall, Mayor Saunderson, thank you. Would any member of the Standing Committee have any questions or comments? Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to either Planner Teakle or Interim Director Glenn. I know it's referred to in the existing bylaw, but I'm wondering if you could just define minor adjustments for council so we have an understanding of what that means.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mayor Saunders. The term minor adjustment is a defined term within the site plan control bylaw, and it is contained in the report. Justin, do you want to just read out exactly what the definition says?
Yes, I'm just pulling that up now. So minor adjustments are defined as proposals that do not have the effect of substantially increasing the size or usability of any building or structures.
Does that answer your question, Mayor Saunderson?
It does, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear for council and our public.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Just a comment that I really appreciated this report and our ability to streamline some processes and make it more effective and cost effective for the applicants going through the minor adjustment requirement. So.
Thank you. Yes, I'll add my thanks. That was a speedy resolution of a technical problem we've had here for a bit. So thank you very much for addressing that. All right. So at this point, I'll bring the matter to a vote. All those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Item 5.6 on the agenda is P 2021-27, official plan update, evaluation of landowner redesignation requests. Interim Director Ron Glenn will speak to this matter.
Thank you, Madam Chair Hamlin. This is a report that is accumulation for our official plan that set out a process some time ago about considering amendments to the official plan or inclusion of proposed amendments that were individual versus comprehensive in nature. The town set out a process where we would go through each request for redesignation, determine whether it was minor in nature or major in nature, and report back to council. If it was minor in nature, it would proceed forward for consideration, not inclusion, consideration in the official plan and through the public process and part of that, the next steps of the OP. If it was major in nature, we would not be taking it forward as part of the official plan, and those requests would have to seek individual official plan amendments on their own and provide the necessary planning justification for those amendments. Nathan from our staff this morning is going to walk, or so this evening, is going to walk you through our staff report, but that's the genesis of the report that's before you this evening. There's a lot there, but it is getting us ready for the next stages with regards to our official plan and those requests for redesignation privately. Nathan?
Good evening, Chair Hamlin and the rest of the committee. Thank you, Interim Director Glenn, for that overview. You covered a lot of the report and what I was going to say. But I will add that we did receive 11 requests for individual redesignations in our official plan update process. Some of those were specific to one property. Some were collaboration of a number of properties, sometimes up to 7 in some cases. And so we evaluated those requests with the Planning Partnership, which is the consulting firm that is working with us on this project. And we came up with the recommendations contained in Appendix A of the report. There were 5 requests that were deemed to be minor in nature and ones that we could consider moving forward and to evaluate them based on the upcoming land use framework that we'll be proposing in the official plan. And there were 6 items, requests that were deemed to be major and that we will, with council's blessing, reach out to and just advise about the process for filing a site-specific privately proposed official plan amendment application.
Is that the end of your?
Yeah, that concludes my my overview. We're happy to answer any specific questions that you may have on the report.
All right, thank you. So before I turn it to the committee, would there be any questions or comments from the public?
We do have a couple hands coming up here. So first up, I'll get you to say your full name when we allow you to speak here, because I can only see part of your name. So it's coming up as McLaughlin. So we'll invite you to speak here.
Hello?
Hi,
Okay,
welcome.
thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lachlan McLaughlin, and I am a resident of Collingwood's Tanglewood community. It abuts one of the holes of the Cranberry Golf Course. I would like to comment briefly on the request to the town by the owner of the golf course for consideration of the redesignation of 22 hectares or nearly 55 acres of the golf course lands to be included in the official plan update. I've been working with a number of other residents in the entire Cranberry area, and you'll see that agenda item 7.1 later on the agenda contains the comments of several of them. We have engaged close to 2,000 residents, all of whom are strongly opposed to any such redesignation for the many good reasons expressed in their various pieces of correspondence to you and to the other councillors. In addition, you may be aware that our petition objecting to any such redesignation, which we launched just 3 weeks ago, has now received in excess of 1,250 signatures. We are greatly encouraged that the town's planners and planning consultants have recommended that this particular request be defined as a major change in land use, which would require an official plan amendment. We fully support this planning recommendation. The golf course owner's request is for a significant change in designation and for a very large and unspecified parcel of recreational land. As such, the potential impacts on environmental, infrastructure, traffic, and neighborhoods, to name only a few, need thorough and careful study, as the planners have cited. We respectfully request that both this committee and the full council support the planning recommendation as well. We acknowledge that Mr. Law has made substantial contributions to the form and quality of life in Collingwood over the years, and that he is entitled to explore any options that come with ownership of these significant recreational lands. That said, however, we are also asking the planners, the clerk, and this committee to make us aware of any subsequent requests related to development on the Cranberry Golf lands, so that we may once again marshal the voices of many thousands of community members to advocate for the responsible and sustainable development of the community, while simultaneously respecting the use of this invaluable recreational resource and the retention of appropriate and much needed parklands within the confines of the town. I thank you for your consideration of our position on this matter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, and for taking the time to address this committee. Deputy Clerk Dawes, would there be anyone else?
Thank you. We have Yuli Raff that's up to speak next. And we have
Thank you.
2 other people after him wishing to speak so far.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hamlin.
Good afternoon.
members of the Committee. I heard through you, I'd like to ask Planner Wukash, who mentioned the new land use plan framework, when that is expected and when it will be made public.
Nathan, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, through Chair Hamlin to Mr. Rath. We are working diligently on a first draft of the official plan right now, and we hope to have that released later this fall for public consultation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wukash. Through you, Chairman Hamlin, will it be only made public through a draft of the official plan or as a separate document?
Could you just clarify what you mean by that, Mr. Rath?
Well, I understand from the answer, Chairman Hamlin, that the new framework for land use will be made public at the time that the official plan is made public in draft form. What I was trying to clarify is whether this document laying out the new land use plan framework will be made public as a separate document or only as part of the official plan.
Nathan, I'll let you answer that.
So
Great.
through you, Madam Chair, the official plan is the land use planning framework for the town. It's the vision that sets the direction of growth and land use in the town going forward. So the release of the official plan is the release of the land use framework for the town going forward.
Thank you for that clarification.
Is that the end of your questions, Mr. Rath?
On this matter, thank you, Chairman Hamlin.
Thank you very much. Deputy Clerk Dahl, can we have the next person, please?
Thank you. The next up is John Moran.
Mr. Moran, over to you.
Yes, thank you. My name is John Moran, and I represent this evening the Board of Directors of Mariners Haven, and wish to speak to you with respect to item 9 on your agenda, which is the request for a rezoning of the lands at 200 Balsam Street here in the city of Collingwood. As you were aware, Mariners Haven is a residential community that is immediately adjacent to the lands at 200 Balsam Street. And the residents of Mariners Haven have a vital interest in any development of the lands. The Board of Directors, on behalf of the Mariners Haven residents, wish to participate in any planning process that might lead to the rezoning of the lands and any future development on the lands. I request that our interest be noted by council and that staff give notice to the Mariners Haven Board of Directors of any future activity and meetings relating to these lands, so that we might make a decision of the extent to which we wish to participate. I thank you for the opportunity of addressing you today on this issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Deputy Clerk Dahl, do you have all the information you need to be able to give that notice?
I do.
Okay.
And I'll make sure planning is aware because they're the ones that will be drafting the report.
Okay, thank you. And there is one more person.
That's correct. We have John Wilkinson wishing to speak.
Thank you.
Oh, hi. It's actually Chris Wilkinson. I'm on my husband's iPad, who is John. And I just wanted to speak on this because I am affected by the rezoning request for 7.1. I'm just a resident, so I'm going to speak from my heart. I feel that Collingwood is a very special place. It makes the residents feel at one with nature. And I moved here because of the way it makes me feel. Collingwood is already becoming so densely populated. The last thing we need to do is rezone recreational or parkland. The rezoning would mean the removal of trees and the displacement of nature. All the beautiful birds, both big and small, the frogs, the foxes, and all the other nature that we so frequently see on the golf course. Also, I know that it's private land, but I can tell you firsthand that there are so many residents that use this property in the winter to walk on, to cross-country ski, and in fact, so many people use it that in the spring you can actually see the tracks made by the cross-country skiing and the walking because there's so many people using it. This area is just so beautiful, and it's, you know, the other thing is it's quiet, right? We don't need more houses, roads, or noise in the area. Every time you make a zoning change, it affects the way residents feel about Collingwood. Development of additional housing takes away from the special nature feel in Collingwood. And so I do thank you for your consideration, and I hope that you will reject this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilkinson. We have your comments. Thank you. Is that all of the deputants at this point?
Through Chair Hamlin, if there's anyone else wishing to speak on this matter, please press the raise your hand feature. And it looks like there's no one else wishing to speak.
Thank you. I'll read in the motion at this time. That report P 2021-27, official plan update, evaluation of landowner redesignation requests, dated September 13, 2021 be received. And further, that the recommendations contained in Appendix A be endorsed and that staff be directed to give consideration to the recommended minor landowner redesignation requests through the official plan update. And further, that council directs staff to respond to the landowners who made a request for redesignation through the official plan update process. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Vice Chair Jeffrey, Deputy Mayor Hall, would any member of the standing committee like to add comments or have a question? Mayor Saunderson, and followed by Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to either Planner Wukash or Interim Director Glenn. You've indicated that a minor request, or one that's deemed to be minor, will go through, but it's no guarantee that it will be adopted as part of our official plan process, and it will be subject to further review by staff, the consulting team, and come back to council. But there'd also be an additional opportunity for public engagement, and I'm wondering if you can just outline how that will happen.
To you, Chair Hamlin, to Mayor Saunderson. Once the official plan is released in draft, there will be a public consultation on the draft document, and all input would be received through that public and reported back through council. And then there'd be another draft that council would receive, and there'd be another subsequent public input that would be ongoing. And the Collingwood Engage page has input on a regular basis, but these be formalized public engagement sessions with the public on receiving comments.
Good. And thank you very much for this report. A lot of work went into this, so thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through to Interim Director Glenn, I'm just wondering if it would be beneficial for council and the public to have something more clear in the motion referring to the result of the major, the ones that were deemed major. I mean, I know we understand based on the discussion we're having tonight, but is there a way of making it more clear that those remaining 6 major would be required to do their own private processes? Can that be more clear in the motion?
I wonder if that would be a question for Deputy Clerk Dahl.
Sure, or, yeah,
Yeah, thank
Right.
you.
Through the chair, if the committee feels that there needs to be more direction provided in the second part of that motion, we can consider it, but it would require an amendment on the floor.
okay. So as a follow-up, Madam Chair, I'd just like to make an amendment. I'm not sure what the wording is. It's, and further that council direct staff to respond to, is this we're wanting to respond to both minor and major to give them the results, or was this targeted for just the major? I guess I don't understand the second paragraph as to who it was referring to.
Well, I read that and I'll ask, perhaps this is a question for our interim planning director. It says that council directs staff to respond to the landowners who made a request for a designation. So that would be all 11, whether they were major or minor. That's my understanding, unless staff has a different view.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct. Our intent was to communicate with all 11 requests for redesignation, and pending the outcome of committee and council's decision, what the decision is with regards to their request.
Okay. So if I could just amend it and further that council directs staff to respond to I don't know, to all landowners who made a request which was deemed major or minor. I don't know how to word it. It's just, I think we should be more clear to the public that may see the motion, but not necessarily have the appendix so they understand what we're doing. I don't know, Becky, if you've got a better wording. If not, I'll just go with it.
What if it was just further that council direct staff to respond to all applications requesting redesignation through the land official plan update process?
Yeah, sure.
Does that work for the planning staff? Yeah.
That would be fine with us.
So through you, Madam Chair, I would make that amendment to insert the word to respond to all landowners making applications.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a seconder for that amendment? Mayor Saunderson, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. And now I'll have a vote on the main motion. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is P 2021-29 draft planned approval extension request for the Trails of Collingwood. This is the Helen Court Homes application. CEO Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make one brief comment on the last item related to the redesignations, potentially before all the folks interested in those left the meeting, if they're going to. And one of the comments, which is quite heartfelt, commented on whether Collingwood should in fact have more residents or businesses going forward. And I just wanted to make it clear that it's not entirely, in fact, it's very, very little up to our own council, whether in fact we do accept new residents. It's part of a much larger provincial process whereby the province will allocate growth to the various areas of the province. And that growth in turn is allocated by Simcoe County to the local municipalities, including Collingwood. So that I just wanted folks to understand that our own council is integral in deciding how that growth is dealt with, what areas of the community it may go to, the housing form that it may take, the preservation of green area within our municipality. But in fact, the growth overall is beyond the control of an individual municipal council. And thank you for letting me make that statement, Chair.
Yes, thank you for that. It's very helpful for our public to understand that. Thank you. All right, on the Helen Court matter, Interim Director Glenn, could we have your report, please?
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. This is a draft plan of subdivision that has been approved for quite some time. It is due to expire in October, and the applicant has come forward and made a request for draft plan extension. Mark Bryans from the planning staff will walk you through the details of the report, and then we'll be glad to answer questions from committee.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Chair Hamlin, members of committee. As stated, this is a request for a draft plan approval extension for the Trails of Collingwood subdivision, also known as Helen Court Homes. Next slide, please. The subject lands consist of a 7.6 hectare parcel. They are located to the east of High Street, which would be south of the 10th Street residential area, and north of the Telfer subdivision. The subdivision is draft approved for 255 units. Next slide, please. Consisting of a high density apartment block adjacent to High Street for 111 apartment units, 34 lots for single detached dwelling units, 16 lots for 32 semi-detached units, 1 block for 78 townhouse units, 1 stormwater management pond block, and lands that would allow for the extension of Cameron Street and Spruce Street. Okay, so these lands are all designated and zoned for the proposed densities and uses. They're well situated in terms of the surrounding built-up portion of the municipality. In fact, although these lands are considered greenfields, they are bounded on 3 sides by the town's built boundary. Basically a logical location for an infill development. Of course, it contributes to vehicular and pedestrian connectivity, and allows also for the continued review of several applications that are already in process to review, to revise the draft plan approval and rezone as part of efforts to remediate the site. And the draft plan conditions, and this is really in keeping with the approach that the town took back in June for 3 other residential draft plan approval extensions. Draft plan conditions have been revised for this approval. They've been added to address servicing constraints, water allocation capacity, phasing, urban and architectural design guidelines. They include no pre-sale clauses and warning clauses, and also the addition of a condition around construction and communications management plan. At this point, we have not received any objections from any of our agency or departmental partners. And there are also a few minor revisions as were needed to update some of our agency partners. So we're now referring to EPCOR rather than the Collingwood Public Utility. So at this point, we'd recommend a 3-year extension, including the revised draft plan conditions as contained in the report. The subdivision does continue to have merit and is appropriate under the town's official plan and zoning policies and provisions, as well as the Simcoe County policies and provincial planning policies. The development would continue to contribute to a complete community and compact urban form. And that would conclude the planning report overview. I am available to answer any questions that committee may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Would there be any members of the public, Deputy Clerk Dahl, who'd like to address this?
Chair Hamlin, we have Yuli Rath that would like to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Rath, go ahead.
Chairman Hamlin, I apologize. I wanted to respond to what CAO Skinner just mentioned, and I pressed the raise the hand button, but I guess I don't have the same access to you fine folks. She did mention that the growth is mandated by the province via Simcoe, and all the town can do is to implement this. I wish to add to that comment that as participating currently in the municipal comprehensive review, it was made clear to all of us that the municipal comprehensive review is an iterative process in which the town is free to come forward with suggested growth targets, regardless of how or what may have been assigned to them by the province. After some discussion on this matter, Interim Director Glenn agreed with me, and Mayor Sanderson pointed out that the strategic plan is a live document. So therefore, I wish to object to the implication by CEO Skinner that these goals are handed down by the province through the county, and the town can do nothing about it, just implement them. That is not a complete and factually accurate statement. Thank you for your indulgence, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. I'm wondering if Interim Director Glenn would like to comment on the discussion, your understanding of this point, and maybe discussions that are ongoing with our planning consultant on this.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. Mr. Rath is correct to a point. The discussions between the town and the county on the distribution of growth, population, and employment is an iterative process until such time as the municipal comprehensive review is complete. And once the county of Simcoe is complete, they must plan to achieve the provincial growth numbers that have been set by the province. And once they, I call it cut the pie, and everybody gets their piece, then we must plan to achieve that growth. So when we bring forward the official plan, we will have a number with regards to population that we'll be planning to achieve based on a certain density. And we will have a number for employment in which jobs we were looking to accommodate. They're not guidelines. They are targets that are minimum targets that the province has set, that once distributed, we must plan to achieve those targets. But it is an iterative process until the county's MCR is done. But once it's done, we don't really have a choice on how much growth we're going to take. We can't say to the county, no, we're not going to take that growth. We then must plan to achieve within the town of Collingwood's official plan.
Thank you. Can I just ask, perhaps just to finish up on this, once the draft official plan is released, will there be an opportunity for the public to have input on this particular item?
There will be opportunity for the public to have input on all of the official plan, including the growth forecasts and how those growth forecasts are accomplished, what the densities are with regards to development, what the assumptions for densities are on employment lands, and what the numbers look like and how they would be accomplished over the next 20 to 25 years.
And if I remember correctly, just one last question, Interim Director, that'll be possibly in the late fall, the first unveiling of that?
Yes, it will be coming forward this fall.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm just going to go back now to Helen Court. Would there be any persons in the audience who might want to address the staff report?
If there's anyone wishing to speak to the staff report on Helen Court, if you could please raise your hand by pressing the raise your hand feature. It doesn't look like there's anyone else wishing to speak.
Thank you. Would any members of the committee like to address this matter? Deputy Mayor Hall and then Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you. Through you to Planner Brian. I have a question specific to the property that is to the northeast of Helen Court Homes. It's a property that I guess is landlocked and is independently owned. And I'm just questioning, I mean, Helen Court Homes has been on the books now for 15 plus years, maybe 20. But has there been any discussion as it relates to this specific property that's landlocked? When I look at the other blocks that are included with Helen Court Homes, the storm water, for example, would that be a storm water that's designed to potentially accommodate future mid-density growth. Because it has been suggested to me, and I think it's incorrect, but and it's part of the question. It's been suggested to me that Cameron Street, where it comes to a dead end, would carry through, but that there would not be any future development in behind the properties, specifically off of, and I can't think of the street name now, Clarkson Crescent. And if I look at that map, it would suggest that at some point that there will be residential growth. And I'm just wondering how that ties in with the developed community that's already there and Helen Court that's been proposed in various stages, as I say, for 15 years. I remember very clearly the very first interpretation of this property was quite different than what has been presented today. I don't have any issues with today. I'm curious about that adjacent property.
Senior Planner Brian, when you're answering this, do you have a map you could put up so we can understand the parcel Deputy Mayor Hall is speaking to?
Actually, if we could go back to the second slide of the PowerPoint presentation, that would probably be a good place to start.
It's the large parcel that is non-color, if I may, northeast corner.
Right, so it's bounded on the north by the Underwood Creek Trail. Well, actually, the Underwood Creek Trail goes through those lands, and then we have the Walnut Trail on the east. So that parcel is medium density designated. There have been no development applications submitted for it, and to the best of my knowledge, there's not been any development interest in that parcel for some time. Its relationship, so it is designated. I'd have to check the zoning on that property right now, which I can look up for you and report back later. Now, in the official plan, Cameron Street is identified as being a collector road right over to High Street. And what's proposed right now in the Trails of Collingwood subdivision would entail the construction of a portion of Cameron Street, which would mean that that parcel would no longer be landlocked, and that there would be the opportunity for frontage onto Cameron Street. So the idea would be that Cameron Street ultimately connects, and that parcel would be capable of being developed, and presumably it would have residential units that would be immediately adjacent to the Walnut Trail.
Any follow-up, Deputy Mayor Hall?
Perhaps just that when we're looking at the Helen Court Homes that has a fairly large block dedicated to stormwater, and then you've already got a stormwater pond directly to the south of the subject property I'm referring to, is allocation as it relates to stormwater, that type of thing, already taken into account for that specific property? I just, as I say, I have been in conversation with individuals who I think are of the incorrect assumption that nothing will be built behind them. And I just want to make sure that people are aware that there is a property that's currently landlocked that has that future development opportunity when we're looking at the whole block as a whole. So I think you've answered the questions.
Okay, thank you. That's, I think you raised a really good point. Mayor Saunderson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My question through you to staff. We've been having lots of discussions, and obviously official plan is front and center in our planning horizon with all the work that's going into that. And so these draft plan extensions seem to generate a lot of discussion about how it is we're carrying forward old projects into a new regime. And I know in the 12 recommendations for insertions in the for amendments in the extension agreement, of the 13, 8 are deemed as major, dealing with things for example, with our water shortage, but also talking about indicating that traffic calming is part of any road construction, that trails and on-street cycling are to be done to the satisfaction of the town. But you also have in here a statement that says, notwithstanding all of these additions to the site plan agreement through the extension agreement, the town always has an ability to impose new conditions under the Planning Act. And I'm wondering if you can just walk us through that, because I think there is concern in the community that when we carry some of these older development agreements forward, that we're going to lose control and our hands are tied by past planning guidelines. So if you can just speak to the tools that the town has to make sure that when these things get extended, we can make sure that any development is done at the current town policies at the time that the development is actually carried forward.
Through Chair Hamlin to Mayor Saunderson. If there were some significant policy change or change in standards that we felt deserved to be incorporated into the draft plan conditions, then we'd have that opportunity. If we change the conditions, and of course, this is a right that's available to the proponent. If we change the conditions, they have the ability to appeal those change conditions as well. But nevertheless, we do have that as a tool to try to keep these subdivisions current, keep the draft plan conditions current. And that's what we've done with these draft plan approval extensions we've dealt with over the past few months. But if something significant were to arise because of a change in official plan policy or whatnot, then we would be able to say, is this something that we need to capture before we start dealing with conditions being satisfied? I guess I'd also say that there's considerable room to maneuver for the municipality in the draft plan conditions. Many of the draft plan conditions, they do end with the words "to the satisfaction of the town," the satisfaction of the town of Collingwood. And in a lot of cases, they're open enough that they give the town flexibility to adapt to changing standards over time.
Okay, thank you for that. Just by way of follow-up then, so if over the next 8 months, when we enact our new official plan, there are significant changes, what are our abilities then to make sure that we can carry forward some of these extension agreements or draft plans of approval into that new regime?
Through the chair again to Mayor Saunderson, depending on the magnitude of those changes, then presumably we would look at our draft plan conditions and see which ones needed to be revised, and then we'd bring forward a report to council recommending that a number of conditions be changed across the board. And then we'd, I mean, if they're reasonable and they're in keeping with official plan policy and whatnot, then it would simply be keeping the developments current with what should be done. And in most cases, I would think that the developers would be in general agreement with that. But again, it depends on the magnitude of the changes and what's being proposed.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Would anyone else have any comments? I have a couple. Firstly, Mayor Saunderson, I think you raised a good point about our flexibility to deal with changes that we might want to have incorporated, that we might see arise to our draft official plan process. And I think our greatest flexibility would be if we had a shorter renewal time, because this gives 3 years. And if, for example, it was only 1 year and this was going to expire, the rights of the developer would be much less in 1 year. But I'll leave you to think about that because that was your issue. I have a question of our senior planner, Brian, which is, I noticed when you put the map up to answer Mayor Saunderson's question, you mentioned the Walnut Trail and the extension of Cameron. And for the first time, it dawned on me that Cameron's going to cross the Walnut Trail. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair Hamlin, that would be correct. The official plan schedule D, which deals with transportation, has identified Cameron Street as a collector road right through to as a future collector road from its current terminus right through to High Street.
And the reason I raise this is I have walked on that trail at hours where kids are going to school. And my recollection, it's fairly chock-a-block with mums and dads on bikes and little kids. And like it's a very much a connector route for school. And how will that tie in with a collector road being constructed over that trail?
That would be something that we'd have to look at whenever we get a development application for that remaining parcel. This draft plan approval currently requires a red line revision to its terminus of Cameron Street such that there would be a temporary turnaround or cul-de-sac. So the connection is something that we would have to look at as part of a future development application on those lands. Right now with the official plan basically identifying a collector road, then any proposal that comes forward with a collector road there would be in keeping with the official plan policy.
I see. Well, I have to say, I find this somewhat problematic, and I guess it's partly what Deputy Mayor Hull was exploring, which is what about the other piece? And now we hear that this parcel is going to terminate with a red line revision at this trail until that piece develops. Would there be some advantages? And now I'm exploring the possibility of myself raising an amendment to have a 1-year extension, which would allow us to see what our new official plan policies bring, and also allow staff to explore the crossing of this important pedestrian cyclist route and how differently perhaps this parcel should be developed in conjunction with that other parcel, because we can't ignore that other parcel, whether the current landowner is sitting on his or her hands now or not, we can't ignore that's a development piece in the community, and it should be looked at in conjunction with this piece for sure. So anyway, that's a bit of a rhetorical question. So I will come back and I will make that amendment. And lastly, Mayor Saunderson, yes.
I'm happy to let you finish, Madam Chair. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. It's on a different point. I just wanted to thank staff for the changes to the standard conditions of draft approval that we have now attached to the Helen Court approval. I really liked the construction and communications management plan in particular, which requires a developer of a subdivision to have a central coordinating contact and tracking for all community complaints, and to have plans for debris, working hours, noise and dust control, importation and exportation of fill, all things that the communities that surround these infill developments have no end of problems with. And currently, our town hasn't had a way to deal with these things in a coordinated way. So this change by adding in what I see as paragraph 33.1 to these draft conditions is a huge improvement in my view. And I'd love to see that the obligations of the developer will also be required to be secured by letters of credit. So anyway, thank you for all these changes. Okay, Mayor Saunderson. Oh,
thank you. And I know the clerk has her hand up. I think we need to get this on the floor. I don't know if we have a mover and a seconder yet.
Thank you. Yes.
So I'm happy to move it.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Vice Chair Jeffrey. Thank you. All right.
And then I don't generally speak twice on an issue, but you raised the point that I want to follow up with staff about the timing of the length of the extension. And I think we had some discussion about this the last time we did an extension agreement. But if I could just get staff to outline for me, you've made a recommendation of 3 years. are there concerns that we are going beyond the time of the official plan amendment so that we would be in a situation where we're not able to update or bring the then current or soon to be current official plan to bear on this development project? So if I could get a response to that, please.
Through Chair Hamlin to Mayor Saunderson, as with the 3 residential draft plan approval extensions we considered in June, we had given each of those a 3-year extension, and that was in recognition of the water allocation and capacity constraints, but notwithstanding that, at the time there was the suggestion that water might not be available, until 5 years when the water treatment plant expansion is completed. So 3 years was seen as a bit of a balancing between 5 years to complete the water treatment plant, as well as provide for, a reasonable amount of time to ensure that we could update the conditions as policies and standards change.
Okay, thank you for that.
Perhaps I'll just ask a follow-up. Would the town have more remedies available to us if it was in a position of not extending draft approval, as opposed to changing conditions? Like, would the town be in a stronger position?
I don't have a quick answer for that kind of question. When we were consulting with the town solicitor back in the spring on these draft plan approval extensions, the advice that we received at the time was to give them draft plan approval extensions rather than to let them lapse.
Mm-hmm. Maybe this is a question for interim director, Ms. Glenn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And the one question or one comment that I will make, and that is around a policy being established for draft plans of subdivision in general. And as you've seen in my short time with the town, you've been faced with a number of draft plans of subdivisions that are 13 and 14 years old. And to me, it would be appropriate for the town to establish a policy that says something to the effect of, we'll consider draft plans for 3 years plus 3, and that will be it. So a total of 6 years to provide tension in the system, because the draft plans are conditional approvals, and people can go to banks and people can do works on sites on draft plan conditions. And so when you have those in place, and I'm going to say as policies evolve and times change, as Planner Brandt indicated, if you start changing conditions, developers can appeal those conditions to saying they're not appropriate. So the only way that you have the real power is not to extend draft plan approval for some subdivisions because of time duration, and say, hey, things have changed, visions have changed, official plan policies have changed, and we want to see something different on that site than what was approved a decade ago. So you have the right to do that. But I think I don't think I can recommend it being done on an individual basis. I think it's something the town should consider as a policy broadly, to say, how long are we going to allow draft plans and subdivisions to be approved, and establish that as a town-wide policy in dealing with development applications.
Yeah, I'll come to you in a second, Mayor Saunderson. I totally agree with that. And it would be appropriate, I guess, for us to ask staff to bring that forward. In addition, I'm quite worried about these draft plans that are like this one, that are coming forward in the midst of our official plan review. And as you've just indicated, if we approve this for 3 years tonight, and our new official plan would make significant changes to this plan, all we can do is change the conditions, which are subject to appeal. On the other hand, if we extend this for 1 year tonight, and there are significant changes recommended through the new policies, then this time next year, we can turn this down, or at least, because we have two choices. One, turn it down and there's no route of appeal, or say to the developer, we're going to turn it down unless you make these substantial changes that conform to our new policies. So, I'm of a mind that right now I would like to make a motion to extend this for 1 year only. And secondly, ask staff to come back to us with a policy that would address what is the maximum length of time we should be dealing with draft plan approvals, and also how should we be dealing with requests for extensions of draft plan approvals while we're in the official plan process. Should they all be 1 year? Should they be 2 years? How should we be dealing with these? Because 3 years, to my mind, seems too long, and I worry we're going to get into trouble. Okay. Mayor Saunderson, did you want to add something to this?
Yes, thank you. I had a question, but I guess a procedural point. If you want to bring that motion, you'll need to pass the chair to Vice Chair Jeffrey to put that on the floor. But to follow up through you to staff, this type of policy decision, could it not be part of the official plan amendments, the official plan update, to put in place these strictures? Because it seems to me it's likely, with the timeline we've got for our official plan to come back, that's faster than actually getting a staff report to put in a policy to amend that now. So I'm wondering if that is something that can be included in the official plan process.
Interim Director?
Through you, Chair Hamlin, to Mayor Saunderson, I believe it is something that we could consider under the implementation section of the official plan. And I'll take that under advisement and speak to the planning consultant about inclusion.
Okay, that would be great. And then maybe if I could ask if you could report back at our council meeting that we'll be dealing with these issues at, to give us the update. And if it's not something that can be incorporated, then I guess we can put a motion on the table then, or look for a staff report. But if that can happen, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so perhaps at this point, I will turn it over to Vice Chair Jeffrey so I can make a motion, and the motion would be to amend the report before us so that the second part of the motion would read, and that council approve a 1 year extension of draft plan approval for the Trails of Collingwood plans of subdivision.
Thank you. And just to confirm, we actually have read in the motion, correct? Yeah, okay, thank you. So is there a seconder for Chair Hamlin's amendment? Seeing none, I can pass the chair back to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this has been a good discussion. All those in favor of the staff report motion? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next item is 5.8, PW 2021-13, Hurontario Crosswalk Review. This will be Director Slama and Manager Velick speaking to us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hamlin. The report this evening presented to you is in response to a council resolution made in February. So Manager Velick is here this evening, and he will speak to the review that was completed on the Hurontario Crosswalk and review the results and summarize in the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. So next slide, please. So in February, Council passed a resolution asking staff to review the costs of converting the existing crosswalk to a mid-block pedestrian signal, similar to the one installed at Chamberlain and High. Council also asked staff to review the installation with the MTO. Next slide, please. So staff had a survey done to measure driver compliance on July 23rd and 24th of this year. That was a sunny Friday and Saturday. The observer was requested to push the button every 5 minutes to gather a larger data set. And as can be seen, unfortunately, compliance is quite low, especially in the northbound direction. This was quite surprising. Well, it was somewhat surprising, as it's not generally what we've been hearing from our peers in other communities. We also had a secondary engineer review the layout and sight lines to the flashing beacons, and they didn't find any issue with the way it was currently configured. We believe the issue is both unfamiliarity with the new type of crossing, along with the change from a rural to urban roadside environment when entering town that may catch people off guard. Next slide, please. We looked at two options. The first being installing additional flashing beacons above the road. Other municipalities are starting to do this. It has a cost of approximately $14,000. And this is similar to what was installed in front of the Palgrave Fire Hall on Highway 50, which has been circulating in some of the recent emails. Next slide. The second option is to convert the crosswalk to a mid-block pedestrian signal. Most of the hardware can be reused. The pole locations can stay, but we still need to redo the pavement markings, the wiring, install new traffic signal heads, pedestrian signal heads, push buttons, and traffic controllers. Traffic controller, which is the brains of the traffic system. So this would cost about $65,000 plus about $10,000 in engineering. Next slide, please. So staff are recommending option two. We're eager to make this switch as soon as possible. There is an 8-week delay on parts, and we still need to furnish the engineering drawings. We would be looking at an install date in early December. Depending on the weather, pavement markings may not be possible. Staff are concerned with opening an incomplete intersection, and that is why we're recommending to have it reconstructed in early spring. And next slide, please. So staff were also asked to have MTO review Collingwood's crosswalk in light of the lack of compliance. Staff are part of the Road Safety Committee of Ontario, which comprises over 30 large municipalities. And they've expressed similar concerns with this type of crosswalk and have sent formal correspondence to the ministry expressing such. So MTO has responded and stated that municipalities are free to install enhancements as long as they conform to the existing regulations. So what we've recommended in the first option conforms to existing regulations, and we're also free to add other enhancements as we see fit, as long as they don't conflict with the Highway Traffic Act and other regulations. So MTO will be reviewing the Road Safety Committee's concerns in their next update to the OTM manual. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, it's staff's recommendation to convert the crosswalk to a mid-block pedestrian signal for a total budget of $65,000 plus the $10,000 for engineering. No extra budget is required for the engineering, and staff will request the $65,000 conversion cost in the 2022 budget for spring construction. And thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Would there be any members of the public who wish to address this matter?
Chair Hamlin, if there's anyone wishing to speak, if you could please press the raise your hand feature. It doesn't appear there's anyone wishing to speak to this item.
Okay, I'll read in the motion. The staff report PW 2021-13, Hurontario crosswalk review be received, and that council approve the redesign of the Hurontario crosswalk by converting the existing pedestrian crossover to a mid-block pedestrian signal crossing to better protect pedestrian safety based on demonstrated driver non-compliance. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Vice Chair Jeffrey, Mayor Saunderson. Would the standing committee have any comments or questions? Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through to Peggy and John, what was our original cost with the crosswalk, if you could refresh my memory?
I believe it through the chair, I believe it was about 75,000.
So about, yeah, thank you. So through the chair, about the same amount. I mean, I think as far as given the low compliance, and really it didn't shock me at all, given the feedback I was receiving from people who were coming through there. So anyway, I'm very supportive of the change, but it's unfortunate that we've had to double up our money based on a ministry recommendation. So anyway, I'll leave it at that, but I think we're doing the right thing.
Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to John or Peggy. I am in favor of option 2. I'm just wondering about the timing. You've indicated that it wouldn't be done till next spring because of the difficulties painting the road. Is it not possible to get it all in? I mean, in the winter, the road's mostly obscured with snow anyway. So I'm just concerned about the delay. That's all.
Yes, through Chair Hamlin to Mayor Saunderson. This is something Peggy and I have been going back and forth on quite a bit because we both would very much like to see this installed as quickly as possible due to the low compliance. You can't paint a road when it's very cold, and it's usually quite wet or covered in snow or sand or salt. You can't paint a road in winter. So what we'd be looking at is we could scrub off the old markings and not put any on at all, but it would mean there would be no stop bar. It may cause some confusion as to people to where to stop. So our thoughts were, let's get it done all at once and correctly all at once. I know it is a minor, it seems like a minor item to affect the schedule so severely, but those were our thoughts.
So if I just by follow-up, if we left the current markings in there, I mean, they do mark where you're supposed to stop. Unfortunately, no one or very few seem to be doing it. And I think any delay is very unfortunate. And given what we're seeing from the study, it seems to me that I'd rather proceed with maybe less than ideal road markings than delay it personally.
Yeah, so through Chair Hamlin, just to follow up on Mayor Saunderson's comment, the current markings are shark's teeth. They're set too close to the crosswalk to function as a stop bar. The traffic signals are up at quite a height. They're up, a higher level than the beacons. So you need to set the stop bars further back so that people can see the signals without having the ceiling of the car obstruct the view. So that's the reasoning behind that.
Okay, one follow-up then. Is there any issue with painting the road now and doing it in advance and then having the later installed?
Yeah, through Chair Hamlin, we did discuss that actually today. We think it might be somewhat confusing having a stop bar on the road now. There is, we will put up, stop here on red signal signs. Whether that'll be clear enough for people is really not clear to me. It's a risk. I mean, we could put up the intersection, get all the electrical work done, and then find ourselves unable to paint it. Is it something we could live with? It's marginal.
Yeah.
Yes, Director Slama.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. I'll just wanted to add to Manager Velik's comments. So we have had a lot of discussion about this and talking about the opportunity to move the installation or the transition to the mid-block crossing sooner than next spring. And as Manager Velik said, right, much of our discussion was about these pavement markings. So Manager Velik has been having discussions with procurement to, from that perspective, to look at to expedite or the best way that we could have the technical components of the installation completed this fall. So as noted in the report and in his presentation, right, there is an opportunity for us to move forward with changing the crossover as quick as we can this fall. And we run that risk of not being able to adequately complete the pavement markings at that crossing. And we wanted council to be aware that it wouldn't be, if we went forward with that option, we wouldn't be conforming to the standards. And there is a little bit of risk and liability associated with not having that stop bar painted, or painted in the, not the right markings, or not painted in the right place, or maybe painted and it doesn't stay. So that would be, that's just part of the, I guess that's the liability we take, right? If we decide to go that route. The other item that I wanted to mention is, if we wanted to consider this, then moving forward this year, then we would need to have an amendment to the recommendation for the funding for the project. Because right now, as it stands, the way the recommendation is worded, we are including it in the 2022 budget.
Okay, well, let me think about that, and I'll let others ask their questions. Thank you for that.
Mayor Jeffrey, did you want to, Vice Chair Jeffrey, sorry, I'm tired.
Thank you. I think Deputy Mayor Hall had his hand up first, then I'll go.
Oh, thank you, Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you. Quick question and then a couple of comments. The question would be, are funds available in the 2021 budget, or can funds be made available?
Yes, there are through Chair Hamlin. Yes, funds are available through the formerly called the federal gas tax. The new name escapes me, but yes.
Okay. I guess my comments would be, first, thank you for the effort and report that you've brought forward tonight, because it has been an issue of concern to our residents who not only use that, but who go through and maybe are unaware of what they've actually just driven through. It's unfortunate that we haven't had the type of compliance that we should, and it's no excuse. I mean, if I'm pulled over by an OPP officer and I'm going 85 and a 50, I can't use the excuse that, well, I didn't see the 50-kilometer sign. And the same is true with this. If I don't see the flashing lights, I can't say to the officer, well, I didn't see the flashing lights. It's incumbent as a driver that you're aware of what's in front of you or around you when you're driving, and no different here. That leads into my comment, though, and it was with regards to the second part of the request, and it was to do with MTO. And I am not surprised, but I am disappointed by the response from the MTO. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Velik, but if I heard what you said correctly, basically what they've said is, we've designed something, and if it's not working to the best of what we thought, you're given the opportunity as a local municipality to add design enhancements. And I would respectfully suggest to MTO that they've designed something that doesn't work properly in this particular area. And it goes back to the point I've made. It's not my point, it's others have made the same point. And that is that this is a road in which it is fairly wide at this particular point. The arms are far reaching. The lights are amber instead of red. And they are not maybe where they should be as it relates to sight lines for drivers. And therefore, having something installed similar to what's at Chamberlain and High, and what has just recently been installed, thank you, at the Parkway and Niagara, are more suited for this particular location. And so I fully support moving forward. It's unfortunate. Thank you, MTO. Perhaps they'd like to pick up the 65,000 plus 10, but and I'd be prepared to come back to that, to actually send something further to the MTO. We did it unsuccessfully, but we repeatedly went after MTO as related to the crossing in the Blue Mountains, just east of Grey Road 2, where the Georgian Triangle or Georgian Trail crossed. And we were unsuccessful, but at least we got the message across to MTO that attention needed to be paid. And I think I think that they need to pay attention here. This is a design that they've come up with, that they've implemented as a standard. And in my opinion, I'm not an engineer, but common sense would dictate that this is something that doesn't work in this particular setting. I can see it working in other environments and have witnessed myself. But as part of my rant several months ago, I think it's incumbent from somebody from MTO to actually visit the site and take a look at it for themselves. The numbers speak loud and clear. They were done on a Saturday and Sunday. It'd be interesting to see, more importantly, what they look like on a weekday at 8:30 when you've got students who are crossing to multiple schools. And then my last comment, and you mentioned it, and I just think it would be good to proceed, is that, you know, if I'm going through a construction zone where they've put in temporary signalization, they do have those white traffic signs that clearly state, you know, stop here with a directional arrow. And if we can move forward with those immediately, as part of this process to alleviate the winter painting, that type of thing, that would be appreciated, because I totally get what you're saying about not being able to work on asphalt, et cetera, during winter construction or winter conditions. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. So I agree with sooner rather than later and scrubbing off the old while we can and using the markers. My question was going to be, can we put a sign in the middle that also says stop here on two sides and one on the side, and we can add somewhere before be prepared to stop, even before you have to have the stop here, that flashes and says be prepared to stop or something. But I do think sooner than later is important. And I was also going to comment that I was pretty sure that the Canada Community Building Fund, formerly the Gas Tax Fund, funds would be available no matter the time we do the project. So.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as a result of the comments, then I'd like to propose an amendment to the current motion that that we proceed as soon as possible with the conversion, and that we find the $65,000 out of the gas tax funds in 2021.
Okay, then thank you. Can I have a seconder for that motion? That'd be my Vice Chair Jeffrey. Before we vote on that, I have a few comments as well. I'm wondering, and I am in support of that motion, when you look at the numbers, almost 70% of the drivers are not stopping at that crosswalk. And we can only hurry this along as fast as we can, because I am mindful of the liability of having the crosswalk markings not perfect. But I think the other side of that, of course, is the liability we face because our crosswalk signals aren't being observed. The question, I have two other points. One is, while we're waiting for our new crosswalk to be installed, what are the possibilities of having crossing guards placed there during the school hours? And I understand that our crosswalk study, whenever, was done a few years ago now, though, but it was estimating 127 crossings during the peak hours. And of course, it could be higher now. So this is a question to staff. Is that something that can be considered in the interim while we're waiting?
So I can speak to that, or start anyways. Chair Hamlin and Manager Vellick can jump in as well if he has anything further. So I know that we have had some discussions about having a crossing guard at that location, but the town currently just has such a problem retaining crossing guards and finding people to do that work. So you'll remember when the crosswalk wasn't functioning properly, and we did have the assistance of bylaw and some other staff and the OPP working at the crosswalk. But it's not something that's easily sustainable, and to my knowledge. So I think we would definitely go that route if we had the ability to have someone to do it, but the resources are difficult to obtain.
So then my follow-up question would be, what do we do? What is our practical answer here? And maybe when this comes to council, you could have given it more thought. But we have a place now that's attracting children, adults, everyone to cross. And we know that almost 70% of the drivers are not stopping, and they're also speeding. So, it's a thorny problem. And I know maybe you don't have an answer right now, but I think we need to deal with this quickly.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Chair Hamlin. So we have had some correspondence with the OPP and requested again. We're sharing the information that we have gathered on the non-compliance, and so asking them again if they can direct some efforts towards doing some enforcement at the crosswalk and looking at that. We can certainly talk with bylaw about a crossing guard, of the potential to have some kind of staffing at the crosswalk in the interim. I believe, again, when the crosswalk wasn't working before, or I think before, we at a time we had a sign that just on the poles that kind of said, push the button and wait for vehicles to stop before you cross. We have done extensive education at the schools. So I'm not sure, if doing more education at the school would help with this situation, right? I think it's the drivers who need the greater level of education.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. My last question, the consultant's report references the speeding issue and makes a suggestion that we should be reaching out to the county to see if we can put the 50-kilometer-an-hour sign south of Poplar. And I'm just wondering if that's something that staff will be undertaking.
Manager Velick, did you want to respond to that?
I think I'd like to look at that again in context of the plan that we're going to follow through with. If we are going to put a red light in, we still need to move that sign. I have no problem moving it. I just like to give it a little bit more thought. If we were going to go with option one, I think moving the sign back's a no-brainer. But now that we're putting a red light in, I'd like to look at that again. I'm not a yes or no, but I'd like to look at it a little more closely.
Okay, fair enough. I have noticed that some communities put in humongous 50-kilometer-an-hour signs as you're coming into their town areas, especially when they're coming in off of 80-kilometer-an-hour more rural, highways, which is what we're dealing with as you move into our built-up area. So perhaps you could also think, because in my mind, I'm seeing a humongous sign south of Poplar, and then another sign north of Poplar, just in case they missed the first one, because we're then coming upon our built-up area, and a crosswalk, as we've discussed, is servicing a lot of kids crossing going to school. Okay, well, thank you. Maybe you'll have something to report back when this comes to council. Okay, so I'd like to now deal with Mayor Saunderson's amendment. We have a mover and a seconder. So could we have a vote, please? And that's unanimous. And then the main motion, all in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 5 point, it's, we've been at this now for 2 hours. So I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break and come back here at 7:10. Thank you.
How's your trip going?
Hi. Oh, it's so great out here. Oh my God. It's a good thing we have a return flight booked.
Sorry, Chair Hamlin, I just want to remind you that we are still live.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so it's 7:10. We'll continue with the agenda at this point. The next item on the agenda is 5.9. Let me just check here. So that's PW 2021-14, execution of multi-year governance agreement, Metrolinx Transit Procurement Initiative. Director Slama, I believe you're going to take this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hamlin. Our transit coordinator, Chris Wisniak, wasn't able to come this evening, so I'll speak to this report. So this report is seeking committee and council approval to execute a multi-year governance agreement with Metrolinx for joint procurement purposes. So over the last 10 years, Collingwood has completed all of their transit purchases through the Transit Procurement Initiative. Then this agreement would be the second 5-year agreement that Collingwood has entered into. And also when we look at our future plans for transit, we do plan to replace 4 of our existing buses over the next 5 years. So we have a need for these procurement services. So the Transit Procurement Initiative is a legislated centralized program to consolidate the procurement of transit systems, vehicles, technology, and facilities on behalf of transit agencies throughout Ontario in accordance with the Metrolinx Act of 2016. For Collingwood, there is great value in this joint procurement initiative, including reduced time and cost related to public procurement, and also synergies obtained through collaboration with the larger transit agencies. We also note in the report that the Transit Procurement Initiative has kicked off a battery electric buses roadmap, which will be a procurement process that will support transit agencies throughout the transition to electrification, and will be able to be based on individual needs and alignment with current electrification directives. So looking at the opportunities to electrify our transit fleet is something that falls within our strategic plan for the town. So it's very helpful for us as a smaller municipality to lean on this greater group with extensive knowledge and lean on them to complete some of the research and determine what the best options are for transit agencies like us. So that's my summary of the report. If there's any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk Dahl, would there be any members of the public interested in speaking on this?
report, if you could please raise your hand by pressing the raise your hand feature. And there's no one wishing to speak to the staff report tonight.
All right, I'll read in the recommendation at this time. The council received staff report PW 2021-14, execution of a multi-year governance agreement, Metrolinx Transit Procurement Initiative, and that a bylaw be enacted and passed to authorize the execution of the multi-year governance agreement with Metrolinx for joint transit procurement purposes. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Mayor Saunderson, Deputy Mayor Hall, thank you. Would any standing committee member like to comment on this? Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. So through to Director Slama, I was pleased to see the electric bus transitioning included in the report, but I was a little fussed by the description of in the future. So I didn't know if their research meant in the future beyond the 5 years, within the 5 years, because the money is available now to be retrofitting our buses. So I don't know if there's a benefit to this. If can we retrofit outside of this arrangement, or does it restrict us to just that one purchasing power? Thank you.
Director Slama.
Thank you. Through the chair to Vice Chair Jeffries. So what I can tell you that the intended kind of next steps for the initiative with respect to this transition to electrification, they indicate that they're going to be completing initial procurement of consulting services to plan and budget for the optimized fleet transition. And they're targeting award in Q1 2022. And this would be followed by the procurement of vehicles and charging systems. And this is planning expected to start in the summer of 2022. So, I anticipate it would be the much larger transit agencies that would be moving to that option sooner than Collingwood would, just because it's going to mean a lot of infrastructure for us to make this transition. But looking at the next steps of the initiative, it seems that they are planning to move ahead in 2022. That's their intention anyways.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay. So at this point, we'll vote on the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? No opposed. We're all in favor. Thank you. Okay. Next item is 5.11, water treatment plant disinfection upgrades. Director Slama, are you going to be speaking to us again? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. Manager McGinnity is here this evening, and did you say 15 environmental services mid-year update?
Yeah, I think you skipped the report.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, wait a minute.
We're on 510.
Right. You don't want to miss 510. Okay. 510. So this is PW 2021-15 Environmental Services 2021 Mid-Year Operations Update. Okay. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Slama. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. I'll just confirm that Manager McGinnity is with us here. Hopefully she's been able to connect. She looks like she's connected. There she is.
I just lost you for a minute, but hopefully the connection
You're
holds.
Back. Okay. Well, you can start, Manager McGinnity, and I can take over if
All right.
Anything happens.
All right. Sorry, I'm not seeing the presentation. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there.
Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, so if you'd please advance to the first slide. So I would like to start this presentation with a reference to the Safe Drinking Water Act. There has been some discussion about what it means for council to satisfy their legal responsibilities under the Safe Drinking Water Act with the recent passing of the ICBL in Collingwood. So Section 19 of the Safe Drinking Water Act, as presented on the slide, outlines the expectations around the standard of care, while Section 11 of the Safe Drinking Water Act goes into more detail about the owner's responsibilities. The hyperlink included on the slide will take you to a website that provides some discussion about what the legislation means and includes some questions that the provincial government recommends the owner be able to answer. So if you feel you need more information on any of these items, please don't hesitate to reach out to staff. But it is our hope that this report and presentation provides an update on the status of the drinking water system to help council fulfill its standard of care responsibilities. So next slide. As part of this mid-year operations summary update, we'll be looking to provide an update on both drinking water and wastewater operations to provide a comprehensive view of what the Environmental Service Division has been busy doing in the first half of 2021. So from the water system perspective, we'll be looking at production rates, utility locates, water main breaks, maintenance work, capital project updates. And on the wastewater side, we'll look at maintenance work as well as some capital project updates. Next slide. So the total drinking water demands in the Collingwood drinking water system are noticeably higher than the first 6 months of the previous years. And the maximum day demand we have seen so far indicates that the water treatment plant is operating at approximately 81% of its rated capacity. However, acknowledging the current winter water supply limitations, I also wanted to mention that the water treatment plant operated up to 83% of its winter treatment capacity from January to April of this year. And this assessment is based on the water demands observed from January through April and a maximum desired free chlorine residual entering the water distribution system of 2.2 milligrams per liters. These capacity numbers align with the actions the town is now taking to expand the water treatment plant. And while these percentages do not include water supply that has been committed to development but not yet connected to the system, with the ICBL in place and associated land use planning studies underway, we now have confidence that the water treatment plant supply capacity will not be exceeded prior to the completion of the expansion. Next slide. We've also noticed an increase in utility load rates above what we experienced in the first half of previous 3 years. We're having to allocate more staff time to try to keep up with these demands, but being able to divide our team using some additional fleet that was made available during the COVID pandemic has helped us achieve this task. A lot of these higher utility locates, we believe, are attributed to a lot of private homeowners completing projects on their properties that they started during the COVID pandemic. And so it's not only us that are struggling to keep up with the demand. Next slide. In the first half of 2021, we repaired 6 water main breaks, which is comparable to the 5 we experienced in the first half of 2020, and also includes a repeat offender on Highway 26 West. Most of these were immediate repairs, and our operators attempted to complete the repairs while maintaining system pressures. However, most of these repairs required a short, confined outage. Next slide. From the maintenance perspective, we completed a membrane upgrade and replacement at our water treatment plant. So this was started back in 2020 and completed in June of 2021. So we're happy to say that a full train of filters has been replaced and is now operating at full capacity. We've also completed the booster station upgrades at Osler Bluff. This included some new electrical panels and controls, and an underground chamber access hatches were also completed. So this is now fully in operation and under warranty. Our annual instrumentation calibration has been completed at the water treatment plant at other water facilities, including the reservoirs and tower. We did some window repairs and replacements at the water treatment plant. So that was finally wrapped up just this week. The major work was done earlier this year, but we had one warranty issue that needed to be resolved. And we also managed to do some repairs to some of our membrane filters. So the ones that were not replaced, we were able to go in and repair some of the damaged membranes. So this will help improve our operating water treatment capacity until these membranes are replaced. Next slide. So we're well into our water treatment plant expansion project now in the design phase and completing. This was awarded back in July, so outside of the window of this update, but we are completing consultation as we speak. Lots of meetings and workshops planned over the next couple months. We previously spoke to the Osler Booster pump station, and our Stewart Road Reservoir and 10th line water main is currently on hold. While we focus on the water treatment plant expansion upgrades and capacity issues. The Carmichael Reservoir and Pumping Station is still underway. We're in the design phase. We have 30% design package received, looking to get the 60% design package later this fall. Our goal is to have that start construction next fall now. We spoke to the membrane replacement at the treatment plant, and we also did an interim update to our water model to incorporate development that has happened in town in the past couple of years since the master servicing plan was last done, since there were some significant changes, and we wanted to make sure we had the most accurate information available when modeling future development applications. We're working on the 6th Street water main replacement. So this is a combined replacement as well as development project. So we have an old 100 and 150 millimeter diameter water main on 6th Street that has had numerous breaks and is required to be replaced and upsized. And we also have to have additional water conveyed across to the west side of town to help support getting supplying water to development and the Stewart Road future reservoir there. So we're working on the design of that and looking at actually twinning the water main potentially with a new one, a replacement of a 150 for the existing and a new 400 as well. In the process of doing our SCADA upgrades, so some software, the software RFP was out and it just closed last week. So we're going to be evaluating proposals on that and looking to award the software purchase to a vendor, hopefully early in October. Next steps will be to develop some standards, SCADA standards, and then move forward with the RFP, a request for proposal for integrator services to implement this at the water treatment plant. We're in the process of undertaking some structural repairs at the water treatment plant. So this is something that we've noticed for several years, and it's starting to get a bit worse and making us a little nervous. So we're going to try to do some work prior to the expansion project, which was the original plan to address it. So hoping to get that tendered shortly and the work completed later this year. And we're also looking at doing a Pretty River Parkway valve replacement. So this is a major undertaking that it seems like a small project, but has kind of blown up just based on the location and some of the infrastructure surrounding it, challenges surrounding that. So working on the design, it's an engineering roster assignment and looking to get that out for construction next year. Next slide. So on the wastewater side, we've seen actually a slight decrease in flows at our wastewater plant compared to the same period over the past 3 years. And this is potentially attributable to the drier than usual spring that we saw this year. And this reduced inflow into the wastewater system. And so a comparison of our average day wastewater treatment rate to the rated treatment capacity of the plant indicates that we're operating at an average capacity of about 57% in the first half of 2021. But this number will be updated since our capacity is actually based on annual average day flows over the course of a year. So we'll have a correct number for 2021 early in 2022. Next slide. From a maintenance perspective, we had several emergency repairs that we had to complete this in the first half of 2020, including our bar screens in the Headworks building. We also took down a clarifier, a primary clarifier, to complete some repairs on that. We've completed vibration monitoring, which is routine monitoring we do on our pumps to make sure that they're operating within the desired range. Doing some HVAC upgrades for the administration building. And we also had to do some emergency cleaning of our Digester 1 mixer due to debris accumulation on the mixing equipment, and also do an emergency replacement of the pump at the 10th line sewage pumping station. So that pumping station was temporarily on being pumped and hauled using trucks for a couple of weeks there while we had that pump on order. Next slide. From a capital projects perspective, we're moving ahead with our our sludge pump replacement. So that tender was awarded early in the summer and equipment is on order. So we're hoping to see construction start this fall. The plant brick replacement and masonry repairs was completed in early 2021. And we're in the process of awarding the contract for the digester cleaning. Screw pump replacement, we're having consultation with some of the roster engineers to come up with a suggested design for that, looking at alternative treatment or equipment for that process. We managed to get UV transmittance installed as part of our disinfection process for the wastewater, and also installed VFDs on our influent pumps. Patterson Street sewage pumping station has been delayed a bit due to some scope, enhanced scope for that project. So we're working with the roster engineers on the design, and we're hoping to get that out to construction later, in early 2022. And just as a side note, in addition to these maintenance and capital projects, our wastewater treatment operations staff have also started to collect and submit weekly samples for analysis of the COVID RNA. And this initiative is being completed in partnership with the province of Ontario. Results of these sampling events are now publicly available on the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit website if anybody is interested. Thank you. And last slide. So thank you very much for your time, and be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you for that presentation. Would there be any members of the public who would like to comment on this?
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. So if there's anyone wishing to speak to this item, please press the raise your hand feature. And it doesn't appear anyone would like to speak to this report tonight.
I'll read in the recommendation that staff report PW 2021-15 Environmental Services 2021 mid-year operations update be received for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Hall, Vice Chair Jeffrey, thank you. Would any committee members like to comment on this? Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to staff. It's a busy update in what has been a very busy year in our water department anyway, but I just was struck by a comment you made, Manager McGinnity, when you're talking about the wastewater treatment plant, but the flows being down slightly this year due to rainfall. And so that kind of clicked my mind again to something that I've been pushing, and I'm wondering how best we can go about doing this, because it's going to have an impact on both our water treatment plant load as well as our demands on our wastewater treatment plant. And that's ways that we can encourage stormwater harvesting. So to use, so moving forward for new developments, if people trap their stormwater in a cistern, they can use that to flush their toilets. I'm told 1/3 of water in a household is used to flush a toilet. So we don't need to flush toilets with purified water, which is becoming very dear to our community and others. And we can also lessen the load on our wastewater treatment plant. So I'm looking for suggestions about how we can accelerate stormwater harvesting. You know, and I look at a community, and this goes to sustainability on the West Coast. Halifax was ideally suited for solar water heaters, and they got a program going out there, and it was so successful. They now have the highest, one of the highest incidents in Canada, I think, of solar energy capture, period, not just for heating water, but also for running their homes. And I'm wondering how we can take this opportunity in Collingwood to be pushing stormwater harvesting to the forefront, and work with our development community and others to make sure that we do that.
Manager McGinnity.
I can try my best to answer. I see Director Slama is willing to take a stab at this as well, so I appreciate that. I think, I acknowledge your comment, and I think, we're doing some initiatives. I'll take this cue as an opportunity to promote our rain barrel program. So we've just launched and making rain barrels available for town of Collingwood residents to purchase. That would, instead of using the rainwater for flushing toilets, they can use it to water their lawns. So that's one opportunity that we see in terms of water conservation. we are looking to do an update, a water conservation plan for the town. And I see that as one of the initiatives that we could look at through that process in conjunction with the building department, because there would be definitely building code implications of having different plumbing systems for different water uses within the same facility. So I admire your enthusiasm, and I equally agree this is a great opportunity for the town. So I hope that we can find a way to promote that. But I will pass it on to Director Slama to fill in any gaps.
Thank you, Heather. So through the chair to Mayor Saunderson, I think that it is something that's an interesting initiative for us to consider. And I'm wondering if there's good opportunity with our climate specialists that the town is looking to hire. If this, I'm thinking of it kind of broadly and corporately as well, similar to Heather's comments about, considering water conservation and that being a bit of a joint program with the building department. I see this, engineering being involved in these discussions, and our climate change specialist looking at what the opportunities are for the town and for the residents to develop a program along those lines.
I think that's great, and I appreciate that. And I do know, in talking with CBO Miller, that we already at the town have a brochure about how people can put a cistern in, and I guess the issue is, if you're going to be drawing water at some point to flush your toilets, then you have to have the proper valves in place to make sure that there's no backflow. But it just seems to me that this is a way that Collingwood can be putting ourselves out in the forefront and serving a local need and a regional need, since we're shipping water out as well. So I'd really like to see us get to figure out a way to roll up our sleeves and get to work on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Would any other member like to comment on this report? All right, so I'll just bring this to a vote then. All in favor of the motion resolution, and that would be unanimous. Thank you. All right, now to 5.11. This is PW 2021-16 water treatment plant disinfection upgrades. Director Slama or Manager McGinnity?
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. I'll give a brief intro. So as we were talking with council and our municipality about some of our water limitations in the winter, one of the interim options that was brought forward, and council supported staff looking at it for greater consideration, is, what could we do in the interim until the water treatment expansion is complete, to address our winter limitations with respect to disinfection. So the report that Manager McGinnity has put together, and she'll speak to it tonight, looks at some of the options that we have considered and provides our staff recommendation on how to move forward. Manager McGinnity.
Thank you, Director Slama. I'm still not, I don't know if it's my view. I'm not seeing the presentation.
No,
sorry.
she's not up yet.
Okay, I'll just wait a moment then.
Does Stephanie have the presentation? Heather?
I think so, sorry.
Okay. There we go.
Perfect, thanks, Stephanie. All right, so if we can go to the next slide, please. Perfect. Right, so council's aware that there is a limited supply of drinking water available to support new development in town until our planned water treatment plant expansion is complete. So report PW 2021-09 and PW 2021-11 provided some context around the winter water treatment limitations and the challenges that we expect to face with increasing chlorine doses to continue to achieve the necessary disinfection requirements prior to the water treatment plant expansion. These reports also discussed in detail some options available to address the winter disinfection limitations that would increase the remaining available drinking water supply capacity while the plant expansion is underway. A key recommendation that was supported by council was to direct the engineering team retained to complete the design of the water treatment plant expansion to look at options to advance the disinfection process improvements at the water treatment plant, with the acknowledgement that even if the winter disinfection limitations are resolved, the rated water treatment plant capacity will continue to limit growth in town until the expanded water treatment plant is complete. Next slide. So as directed by council, the water treatment plant design and construction engineering team completed a review of options to improve the existing disinfection process to eliminate concerns about the need for future high chlorine dosing. The first option reviewed is the installation of UV disinfection. As outlined in the attached report, the water treatment plant expansion project engineering team identified another configuration that would facilitate incorporating the UV equipment within the existing water treatment plant footprint and size so that it could be reused in the future expanded water treatment plant. The successful implementation of this option would restore the full capacity of the water treatment plant in winter without increasing chlorine dosing and can be completed prior to winter 2022-2023. The only downside that we see of this option remains a throwaway cost associated with the construction and equipment that cannot be reused in the expanded water treatment plant. Next slide. The second option considered was advancing the construction of the additional chlorine contact infrastructure planned for the expanded water treatment plant. This option would also restore the full rated water treatment plant capacity in the winter without increasing chlorine dosing, but it would not be completed until winter 2024-2025. There are also additional costs associated with this approach, as there would be additional engineering and construction costs associated with managing a large construction contract separate from the water treatment plant expansion. Another disadvantage of this option that wasn't discussed in the report is that it would eliminate the potential efficiency that we are now exploring of reusing membrane tanks, the existing membrane tanks, for future chlorine contact infrastructure at the expanded water treatment plant. Next slide. So following a review of both options, staff have determined that adding UV disinfection at the water treatment plant and the alternative configuration identified through the engineering review to be the preferred option to resolving winter disinfection limitations at the water treatment plant. An additional $900,000 would be needed from the town's DC's reserves to allow this to proceed. However, approximately $500,000 of the equipment costs, in addition to the $900,000, would be shared with other municipal customers in accordance with cost-sharing agreements. This option would increase the available SDUs by 790 to a total of 1,285 prior to winter 2022-2023. Next slide. So thank you very much for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on this report now.
Thank you. I understand that we have at least one person in the public who would like to comment on this, Deputy Clerk Dahl.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. Yes, we have Yuli Rath who'd like to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Rath, go ahead.
There we are. I have to unmute. So bear with me with all these buttons. But we're on one of my favorite subjects, which is an item of the consent letter I've sent to the town, item 7.2. So through you, Chairman Hamlin, I'd like to ask Director Slammer, what was the basis of the RFP issued by the town for the capacity of the new wastewater treatment plant in regard to growth projections that will be incorporated for the future expectations of the growth of the town? When I tried to access this RFP, it was locked out by the town, and the contents of the growth projections incorporated in it have never been revealed publicly.
Okay, who would like to answer that question?
An answer.
Director Slama, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. Through the chair to Mr. Roth. Yes, so the RFP that was issued for the water treatment plant expansion looked at expanding the plant in two phases. The first The first phase was to increasing our capacity to approximately 52 megaliters a day. And then the second phase was to just over 100 megaliters a day. And those numbers were determined through the class environmental assessment that was completed when we were looking at the options for the water treatment plant expansion. And in that Class EA, we referenced the master servicing plan, which looked at growth projection numbers as per the Greater Golden Horseshoe growth plan. And so that set our target populations and employment populations in the year 2031. I'm going to say, Heather, it could be 2032. And then the phase 2 of the expansion would give us more than sufficient water to meet our 2044 growth projections, or actually, sorry, the ultimate capacity of the water treatment plant expansion at just over 100 megaliters was to service our ultimate population in Collingwood.
Well, may I follow up, Chairman
Yeah.
Hamlin?
Sure, go ahead.
All that I've seen come out of the province are growth numbers projected for Simcoe County. Those numbers have not been allocated or discussed with the town of Collingwood. So when you refer to the 500,000 and 198,000 jobs allocated to Simcoe County, the question I'm asking has nothing to do with that. What did you use for the town of Collingwood as an estimation of growth forecasts, given that the development freeze, which came up after this happened, was not anticipated in your plan?
Yeah, so thank you through the chair. Manager McGinnity, do you happen to have the actual population numbers for those years handy?
I do not, sorry.
Okay.
But I would just suggest referring back to our official plan, which is where the town of Collingwood growth projections are and what our master servicing plan and water treatment plant capacity is based on.
Yes, so that is correct, Mr. Roth. The growth projections, you could refer to our master servicing plan, which is available on the town website, and that's the basis for how we determined the expansions for the water treatment plant.
One follow-up with your indulgence. I know you're getting tired of hearing from me, Chairman Hamlin. Those projections, the only ones made public, are on the old official plan, 33,400 and so on. What I'm asking for is, what projections have you assumed in the new official plan? Since the question here really comes down to this, how much are the current taxpayers of Collingwood going to have to fund for a future growth that they know nothing about in the new official plan?
So through the chair, at this time, until we have different growth numbers allocated to Collingwood, we're not able to base our expansion on growth numbers that we don't know. So we have looked at the expansion based on the growth numbers that we do have and we do know, and we do understand that we will need to reconsider our master servicing plan when we receive new growth numbers and revise our official plan. But until then, we're planning our expansion in a couple of phases, and in between phase 1 and 2, it's a very modular type of expansion. So we will have the ability to increase our capacity as we need in the future and as we go forward.
Well, thank you, Director Sama. You're the first person who's clarified what's been on my mind for many months, which basically
I was able to
means-
help.
Thank you so much, which basically means that the $60 million the taxpayers of Collingwood told to put up is based on old growth projections that are half the Simcoe County projections for the new official plan. Therefore, the only thing I can conclude is that there will be further additional significant capital expenditures beyond the current 33,400 numbers that are now the basis of the old plan. Is that essentially correct, Director Slammer?
Through the chair, so there will be some changes, right? And the expansion for growth will be paid for by growth.
Thank you. And
Thank
I
you.
think if I can just ask a couple questions to help bring this together a bit. The first phase that you've explained has the 2031 population numbers. That's in our existing official plan right now.
Yes.
Is that right? And that's the first phase. And then the second phase, because I know I asked this question before, I believe, the second phase will take the plant to its full possible expansion based on the size of the property. Is that correct?
Chair Hamlin, that's not 100% correct. It's more so we looked at the second phase of the expansion to accommodate what we know today as our full build out. When we're looking at the design of the treatment plant expansion, we are doing our best to leave some land and leave some potential for additional expansion in the future. But it's hard to say what might happen, over the next 50 years. We also acknowledge that we may need to introduce more treatment processes than we have today, just if the quality of the raw water changes, and we have to address that to meet the requirements.
Thank you. Technology changes.
Yeah.
But we'll do one phase at a time. Thank you, Mr. Rath, for your questions.
By the way, I would like to have my letter answered. That is in item 7.2 of the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. We'll come to that.
I think
later
that's
in the
important, that the public knows all the details. We don't want to see this unveiling and yet another disaster down the road, as we've seen here, on growth that is too high, too fast, and we can't manage.
All right, I see our interim directors come to the table here. Would you like to add some comments? Director?
No, Madam Chair. I was just following up and watching the conversation that Director Slama had answered all the questions fully. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other member of the public, Deputy Clerk Dahl, on this item?
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. It doesn't appear that there's anyone else wishing to speak right now.
All right, so I'll read in the recommendation here. That staff report PW 2021-16 water treatment plant disinfection upgrades be received, and that staff to proceed with option 1, install UV disinfection within the existing water treatment plant as part of the water treatment plant expansion and upgrade project, and that staff to include revised budget requirements to support the installation of UV disinfection at the existing water treatment plant as part of the 2022 capital budget. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mayor Saunderson, Deputy Mayor Hall. Would any of the committee members like to speak to this matter? Mayor Saunderson and then Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And this has been a very hot topic in our community leading up to our April 26th discussion. And we've seen that our numbers of building permits issued has stayed on par with past years. But we also know that one of the main issues in our capacity is the summer-winter differential. And so I'm very pleased to see this report that can eliminate that summer-winter differential as early as November of next year. And that will, as indicated, give us almost 800 new SDUs. So that will add to our capacity dramatically as we move forward towards our plant expansion. And I want to thank staff for their work on this, but I also want to thank the local engineers for their meetings that they held and for some of their input, which was extremely helpful in this. And the mayor, or myself and the deputy mayor participated in those meetings. So I want to thank our engineering community for their input. It was invaluable. And when you consider that really the delta of difference between option 1 and option 2 is $500,000, and this will all be usable, at least the UV filtration will be usable in the new plant. I think it's a great resolution, and I'm very much in support of this, and look forward, as I said, when we were speaking with our consultants, to moving this forward and getting this installed in our current plant. And I know Treasurer Quinlan showed up during Mr. Rath's comments. I think she was going to speak to the cost sharing arrangement. Mr. Rath mentioned the $60 million that our community would be paying, and that's actually not the correct number. So I'm wondering if Treasurer Quinlan might like to weigh in on the cost sharing arrangement for the new plant, at least phase 1.
Certainly. Treasurer Quinlan, would you like to respond to that?
Sure, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I'm just making sure you can hear me. I'm on my cell data here, but wanted to comment that I believe Director Slama did address the development charges are the main contributor to the water expansion plant, along with a cost share with the current municipalities that we share water with. So to be clear, it's not taxpayers' money that goes towards the water expansion plant, and rather a water user fees for the benefiting existing owners that we have. So it all comes through water fees at this point, but mainly development charges.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up, Mayor Saunderson?
No, that's great clarification. Thank you very much, Treasurer.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Thank you. So I totally agree with all of the mayor's comments. The one question I had was our restriction to the plant rating capacity. And I guess my question is, if we have the technology and the ability to produce safely more water than our rating, can it be adjusted upwards ahead of the expansion? And is it a difficult process if so?
Manager McGinty.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Vice Chair Jeffries. So that is something that we are continuing to look at and have on our task list as part of this project. And that's bringing additional capacity online in advance of the full plant expansion completion. That would involve bringing in temporary membrane, because we will be now limited by the treatment capacity of our membrane, existing membrane filtration units, and also getting additional permits and approvals, amending our drinking water works permit and license, looking at what we have the approvals to treat and supply. So it's a slightly different process. We are amending our drinking water works permit for the UV, but it's a fairly administrative one. They're very comfortable with us enhancing our treatment processes versus expanding our treatment processes. So it'll revolve a little bit more scrutiny and consideration around that. And I also want to note that there are very few membrane trail or portable membrane units available. So it's something that we will need to decide soon in short order and get our names on the waiting list if it is something that we want to proceed with in like in the next year or two. So it's definitely on our radar, and we hope to report back to council on that process in the near future.
Thank you. No follow-up, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Slama?
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. I was just going to add on, through the chair to Vice Chair Jeffrey. As Heather mentioned, we are intending to bring some information forward to committee and council for consideration on additional capacity. But one thing to note is that we definitely need this enhanced disinfection for our current meet our current capacity, and we would need it to increase our capacity. So this is the first step of whether we go forward with the dish with more filtration or not, we definitely need this step first.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll now bring this matter to a vote. All those in favor? And that would be unanimous. Thank you. So the next item is 5.12, which we've agreed at the beginning of the meeting would be deferred. So that takes us to item 6 on the agenda. This is the report minutes of committees and boards. So the first one, 6.1, is the Collingwood Heritage Committee meeting. And I just want to check my notes here because I have a different motion I'm going to be reading. And of course, I can't find it. Okay, 6.1, that I'll just read in here that the minutes of the Collingwood Heritage Committee meeting held July 19, 2021, and the special Collingwood Heritage Committee meeting held August 9, 2021 be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved, excluding resolution HER 057-2021 of the August 9, 2021 meeting. And then the second part I will deal with separately to accommodate Deputy Mayor Hall's conflict. So with respect to that particular matter, I need a mover and a seconder. Vice Chair Jeffrey, Deputy Mayor Hall, thank you. Any committee member wishing to comment on that? So we'll bring that to a vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. And then the second part of item 6.1, and I see that our deputy mayor has excluded himself due to his conflict, reads as follows: that resolution HER 057-2021 of the August 9, 2021 Heritage Committee meeting regarding the issuance of a heritage permit for 12 4th Street West be deferred to a future development and operations services standing committee meeting. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Mayor Saunderson, Vice Chair Jeffrey, thank you. Anyone like to speak to that matter? I'll bring it to a vote. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Deputy Mayor Hall can return to the meeting. The next item would be our consent agenda. And there are 4 matters listed on here. I'm going to split them into the first 3 and then the last one, as the last one is the one that Deputy Mayor Hall will excuse himself from. All right, so I'll read in. The council herein received the general consent agenda, and further that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are that of the authors and are not verified or approved as being correct. 7.1, this is correspondence from various people, all to do with the Cranberry Golf Course request for redesignation. 7.2, yearly wrath, that's on the gross forecast for water plant. And 7.3, NVCA board meeting highlights, August 27, 21. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Oh, Deputy Mayor Hall, yes.
If we're simply receiving 7.4, am I not in a position to vote to receive it? And then if it's pulled, remove myself from the table?
So I'm just following Deputy Clerk Dahl's instruction, okay. But let's turn this, we could ask her this question.
If it's just to be received, I'm fine with that. I wasn't aware if anyone would be pulling the item. So if you want to.
All right. Okay, so then I'll just add, then I'll go back to reading the motion, and the last one I had read was 7.3. So I'm going to add in 7.4. It reads ACO Collingwood, enforcement of the Collingwood Conservation Heritage Bylaw. We'll vote to, would anyone wish to speak to that? I haven't had any indications of matters being pulled. Yep, Mayor Saunderson? We can't hear you. You're on mute. Yeah, thank you.
I fixed that, I hope. I don't want to pull any item. I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Rath's comment his letter at 7.2 and just ask staff if they could provide a response to Mr. Rath as requested. Otherwise, I'm prepared to move to bring the consent agenda through.
Thank you. Could someone like to respond to Mayor Saunderson's question? Director Slama.
So yeah, I can work on certainly a response for that and reach out to interim director of planning Glenn if I need to.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? No. So I'll bring this to a vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So item number 8 on the agenda is departmental updates. And I understand Director Slama is going to speak to Huron Street sidewalk update.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. Actually, Manager Velick has a short presentation to give on the Huron sidewalk.
Thank you.
Good evening. Next slide, please. Yes, we wanted to. We had some tender prices come in for this work, and we wanted to provide the committee with an update on this project. So this is the trail between the courthouse and Niagara Street. The project was initiated when the trail became submerged last year. Lake levels have since receded. However, staff still think it's a required project for a few reasons. One, the lake levels may rise again. Two, the current configuration is difficult for sidewalk plow operators to find their way at night and in deep snow due to the windy configuration. In addition, it's difficult to bring equipment in should a plow go off track or become stuck. It's also beneficial to move the sidewalk closer to the road for safety and security purposes. It could be quite dark along the trail at night, and the new sidewalk would benefit from the existing lighting on Huron Street. Next slide, please. So staff would like to, as I said, take this opportunity to update the committee on the budget as costs are in exceedance of the original budget. The original budget for this project was $100,000. Since the budget was approved, staff were successful in obtaining $100,000 in funding through the federal and provincial government's ICIP COVID-19 resilience stream, which is good news. The low bid for this work was $157,000, and combined with the tree clearing and the engineering that took place earlier this year has bumped the budget to approximately $190,000. So while this does not require additional funds due to the grant, we did want to make the committee aware of the cost increase. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Would any of the committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Vice Chair Jeffrey.
Sorry, buried the mouse. Thank you, Chair Hamlin. Yeah, I'm just fundamentally opposed to moving this trail, period. I think it's one of the best pieces of trail we have, and it does, when I walk it, it feels much safer, although I don't walk it at night. It feels much safer to be away from the traffic of Huron Street, and I just think it's a real shame. I just wish there had been an alternative to raise it where it was. I understand some of the complications, but if we do that to every piece of winding trail unlit trail we have, it's not going to be a very interesting trail system. So as much as I understand staff's explanations, I will be voting against this.
Okay, just a clarification to Deputy Clerk Dahl. Are we voting on this tonight?
Chair Hamlin, I'm not aware that there's a recommendation on this coming forward. Maybe John can clarify if there's a budget ask here.
Sorry, that's me. I'll deal with it when I have to, but I am fundamentally opposed to it. I think it's not good.
Okay, thank you for your comment. So now I'd just like to ask if any, yes, CO Skinner.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. I think I was responding to the question that you may have been about to ask if there were
Yeah.
any other departmental updates. And I wanted to draw the committee's attention to the fact that this is Interim Director Glenn's last meeting. The new director, Summer Valentine, will be starting next Monday, the 20th. And while there will be some overlap, this may be the last meeting at which members will be seeing Interim Director Glenn. And I wanted to let you know that, and also to publicly provide my profound thanks for his expertise and support over the last months. It has certainly moved our programs forward in a measurable way. And he has my appreciation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that to us, because I certainly hadn't realized that. And then just on behalf of the committee, Mr. Glenn, thank you so much for your work you've done for our community. Very much appreciated. Yes. Oh. Any other staff person like to bring forward a departmental update at this time? No. Okay. Public delegations. Oh, Director Slama, yes.
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. I was just, I just thought while Manager Bellick is here, we can mention that the Huron-Niagara Crosswalk, it was operational just before the weekend, this past weekend. And maybe, John, you can just provide an update. It's not going to be fully complete until later this fall, but maybe a bit of tweaking, but it is operational. We're happy to see that finally.
Yes, it's fully through the chair, it's fully operational. The buttons and the controllers are on back order, but we were able to source some temporary hardware and to get it up and running. So those parts will be switched out shortly. But yes, it's complete. I'm happy.
Thank you. That's very good news. Oh. Okay, on to number 9, public delegations. Are there any public delegations this evening?
Thank you, Chair Hamlin. If there's anyone wishing to speak and address the committee tonight, if you can please raise your hand. We do have some attendees still here. Looks like they're going to be quiet tonight, so there's no public delegation.
Okay, on to number 10, other business. Do any of the committee members have other business they wish to bring forward? I have, yes, Deputy Mayor Hall.
I'll be very brief. Earlier this evening, we talked about the Hamilton Drain crosswalk, and I think that the story needs to be a positive one. I will circle back, though, and I think I will bring something forward to council for consideration as it relates to approaching the Ministry of Transportation. I think that there needs to be something put in front of them for further consideration. But in terms of the story in Collingwood, I think that it is imperative that the public know that the previous council made a decision based on the information available at the time, and the staff made an informed decision or informed recommendation on the information that was available to them at the time. The story cannot and should not be about having to spend another $65,000 based on what a previous council or previous staff recommendation was. The story needs to be the fact that we made a decision that was based on the information available at the time. Upon implementation, it doesn't appear that it's a system that's in the best interest of our community. And we're making a decision tonight to go forward to council to be verified or ratified to move forward to make these changes. But to my friends in the press, it is imperative that this story is about moving forward, not a duplication in terms of cost to rectify a wrong error made by a previous council or staff, because that, in my opinion, is the false story. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The matter I wish to bring forward is to ask whether there'd be an opportunity for staff and or the CVA to make a presentation to our committee or to the SIC about the Pretty River spillway works before the works are commenced. These are works that are going to be undertaken by mid-October. And I think it would be helpful for our council and the public to have an understanding and have a chance to ask some questions. Director Slama?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hamlin. I can provide a comment on that. So yes, the Pretty River Dike is a piece of flood infrastructure that is owned and maintained by the Nottawasaga Conservation Authority. And there is a need for them to complete some maintenance work on the dike so that it can serve its primary function, which is, to protect the safety of life and property in the town of Collingwood. So in extensive discussion with staff and some really good cooperation from our communications officer, we have made some recommendations, and NVCA has really accepted the need to communicate the work that will be done or needs to be done on the Pretty River Dike. They're going to do some work this fall and some work in the spring. So they have held some consultation with interested stakeholder groups from our community, such as the Climate Action Team, the bee community, bee pollinator community. I think there was about 5 that they reached out to, the Blue Mountain Watershed Trust, organizations like that. So they did have some consultation with them last week. The intention is to have NVCA speak to council on the council meeting next Monday on the 20th to provide some details on what needs to be done and why and the timing of everything. And they are intending to do a mass mail out to the community. NVCA made that decision. So that will be happening next week as well. So all residents of Collingwood will be informed and will have an opportunity to provide comments. Like there'll be some contact information on the information that goes out. Oops, sorry. So details on what they're doing and who to contact if you have some questions or concerns before the work proceeds. And so those opportunities will be there, and council will be getting some further information next Monday.
Okay, thank you so much. That's great. All right, I think we're at the point of an adjournment. Yes? Could that be Vice Chair Jeffrey moving an adjournment? It could be. All right, all in favor? Okay, thank you, council and staff. That was a lengthy agenda and we got through it. So thank you very much. See you next week.
Well done, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Got it in on time.